Hey listeners, this is Heather. We had a bit of audio trouble when recording this episode. We were able to fix some of the worst parts, but there will be some sections where my voice in particular is quiet, gets cut off, or sounds choppy. We're both still pretty new at this, but we've been making strides in learning how to properly handle our audio and upgrading our tools, so hopefully this won't be a problem in the future. We appreciate you listening, even through the rough patches. Thanks, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Dragon Spotting. I'm Diana, pronouns they, any,
And I'm Heather, pronouns she and they.
and we are here today to talk about a movie that has grown near and dear to our hearts, or at least my heart, over the past 5 days since I have watched it now three separate times. And that movie is, of course, Eragon 2006. This, Heather,
Yeah?
this is a doozy of a second episode, I think.
Yeah, I am forced to agree, even though I have only watched it twice, so I am not nearly as versed in this film as you are up to this point.
I mean, the third time that I watched it was with the delightful director's commentary, and we did debate watching it with director's commentary for a second run through of it together, and I'm
Yes.
glad that we didn't because they make it so that the sound of the movie drops about 35,000 decibels whenever the director is talking over it. So it's kind of incomprehensible as a film at that point because as we
Yeah.
will discuss, this movie is not very good, and I love it anyway.
It's it's really not very good. So, you and I have a slightly different relationship to this movie going in.
Yes.
Yeah, where Eragon is obviously adapted from a book series, and this book
Yes.
series is near and dear to my heart because I grew up having my dad read it to me. Whereas
And
whereas your relationship with the book is a
my
little.
relation my relationship to it is I read the first book when I was like 12 and did not think very highly of it. And then a few years later received the last gift as a birthday present, which is very, very sweet. And I was like, well, fuck. I guess I have to read the entire series now because when I was 18, 19 years old, I was very much in a phase of I can't keep a book unless I've actually read it. And it did not feel like I would do the last book justice if I just kind of went into it without having read the first three. So, my sophomore year of college, when I was very much into just reading audiobooks all the time in between reading classwork books, I had Aragon on like, I don't know, 95% of that year because these books are fucking massive. And so I
they're
read,
they're big, yeah.
they're big and I read them almost back to back to back. I had to wait for them at the library, and oh boy, howdy, did I dislike them quite strongly. I say this without ire, without malice. Brissinger, the third book in the series, is one of the worst books that I have ever consumed in my adult life, and I say that with much joy and with complete willingness to reread it for this podcast. So that's my personal history with the series.
Yes, as far as my relationship to the book goes, I don't recall ever getting to Britzinger. I'm pretty sure I only got to the second book, Eldest, and I barely remember what happens in that story. I have not revisited this series until like watching the movie with you.
Mm-hmm.
I did
And
see
Jim,
the movie
yeah,
when
sorry.
I was younger because, I was familiar with the book and I did enjoy the book as a child. So when this movie came out, I was very excited and I remember being incredibly disappointed with it at the time. And rewatching it now, I can fully understand why. Because as you said, this movie's not great.
This movie is not great, and your reaction, as we will get into, because that is something that I do want to talk about.
I,
And
I
as someone who didn't like the original book, I understand it from a fan culture perspective of, oh yeah, that sucks that the thing that you love didn't get properly adapted. But it also makes me laugh because some of the fan criticisms I think are a little bit pedantic and kind of funny. And this is also the point of the podcast where I reach out to fans and I say, hey, fans of the original Eragon book, I appreciate you. If you're one of the people who has criticisms of this movie that equate to the dragon is slightly the wrong color, you're being very silly and I'm going to be laughing at you just a little bit.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny. I had this thought watching the movie, and we're gonna get into it when we talk about the summary. But Diana, I
Heather.
think we should call Courtney Solomon because I think we found the Star Wars of fantasy for a completely different reason.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna get into that. That is a criticism that not me because hey, fun fact about me that you'll know if you listen to the first episode of this podcast. I have never seen a Star War. I am not too familiar with what happens in the Star War and why things are important in the Star War.
Yeah.
But even I, ignoramus that I am, can recognize a Star War in this movie and
Yeah.
also the book when I read it.
Yeah. And worth mentioning as well, for very similar reasons, you've also not seen Lord of the Rings.
Correct. But
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 we'll get into that.
this is Lord of the Star War, well and true. Like that's what this is. And the book is very much, I would say even more so that, especially from the Lord of the Rings perspective.
I
The
mean,
movie, I
the main
think,
guy is named Eragon. It's not very subtle.
yes. The movie, I do think, loses some of that comparison just by virtue of it being only, I think, like 110 minutes long. It's not a long movie.
It's
And
very short.
you feel that it's not a long movie in the worst way possible and also the best way possible. And I actually think that this is the perfect time to bring up a quote from one of our friends.
Oh,
He
yes.
This may become a recurring corner on the podcast where we ask one of our friends his opinion on a movie that we're watching. And you will see why in a second when I tell you what he had to say about Eragon. This is not a direct quote, but it is as close as I could get to remembering what he said.
A very close paraphrase, yes.
Yes, I liked it. It's my favorite movie with a dragon in it. Like when you're watching it, nothing that happens really makes sense, but then it comes together as a movie. I felt the same way watching The Boy and the Heron. And
Dear listeners, that comment did make me very mad. Because what do
and
you mean?
aside from his comparing to Boy and the Heron, which I haven't seen, but just by virtue of most people's reactions to that movie, I will say right out the gate is probably not an apt comparison. But
It's
other than
not,
that,
and the funniest part is, our friend likes Aragon, apparently he hates the boy in the heron. Just to give you
and
an idea of what the situation there is.
I do agree with part of that quote where he describes it as nothing that happens really makes sense, but then it comes together as a movie. I almost want to flip those around. It does not really come together as a movie, but scene to scene, things kind of make sense because it's a fantasy movie that follows very conventional fantasy standard tropes. And so you're watching and you're like, no, I understand what's happening because this is how a fantasy movie is. And then you get to the movie, end of the movie, and you're like, what the fuck happened? No, actually, what the fuck happened? That was way too
Yeah.
short of a time for anything to have occurred. It's
It
kind of awesome.
it has absolutely zero time to tell any kind of weighty story. There's just so little room for stuff to breathe, and I talked about it a lot in our viewing of it, of just how fucked the pacing of this movie is.
And what's great is that because I watched the director's commentary, we're gonna get a little bit of an explanation. And by that
Oh,
I mean, this is a running theme in the director's commentary I found, which is director Stefan Fangmeyer, which, by the way, excellent name for the director of a dragon movie.
excellent name, I agree.
He is constantly just kind of saying things as if you, the viewer, are taking it in and going, yes, I fully understand what you meant by that absolute nothing burger of a statement. And then he moves on. And one of those nothing burger statements that he kept making was, and let me find this real quick in my notes.
Of course.
He repeatedly says throughout this, we needed to keep up the momentum.
What?
And so when we're sitting here, we're like, this thing has no room to breathe. That's on purpose. They
Okay.
did this on purpose.
Momentum is an interesting choice of word
Yes.
because I think it kind of misses the point of that word in the context of telling a story.
Yes.
Which is, things have to keep moving forward. But the fact is, in this movie, they move forward at the exact same pace throughout the entire movie. There is almost no downtime.
Here, I will give one more piece of knowledge. I'm going to drop a nugget of knowledge on you before moving on to more background context for this movie so that we can get into the summary.
Yeah, by all means, drop your nugget.
I know that this isn't going to shock you in any way, shape, or form, but it would delight me if you made a big deal about it.
Okay.
Would it surprise you to learn that this is Stefan Fangmeyer's directorial debut?
What?
And also, Heather,
You're telling me this is the first movie this guy ever made, and it happened to be an ambitious adaptation of an existing property that could be described as the Star Wars of fantasy? This has never happened before.
and would it also surprise you to hear, Heather, that in the nearly 20 years since this movie came out, he has never directed another thing ever again? This movie kind of killed his directing career for some
Oh.
strange reason.
Oh.
That being said, Heather,
Yes.
director Stephen Fangmeyer, this is not his first rodeo in film.
Okay.
Previously and since then, he has worked in special effects. He was specifically the lead computer graphics supervisor on a little movie called Jurassic fucking Park.
Oh my god.
Here are some other credits. These include, but are not limited to, Terminator 2, Hook, The Mask,
What?
Twister, Saving Private Ryan, Signs, 21 episodes of Game of Thrones, and one of the most recent credits he's done is TV show The Three Body Problem.
What the fuck?
This guy directed Eragon.
This man is prolific.
This man's fucking prolific. That's not even half of his credits.
Wow. That's wild.
So,
I guess it's like your pitcher's not the best batter usually.
So this man knows movies, and I really gathered that when listening to the director's commentary. And I think once again that's where that comment about momentum is coming from. He is the kind of guy who in theory knows how to make a movie, but he's not quite sure how to put those theories into. And I think that explains a lot of what we saw. It is a kind of movie that I personally fucking love, where I look at it and I go, I know why all the cogs are turning the way that they are, but that doesn't mean that the machine is moving anywhere. I'm kind of obsessed with this movie, actually.
It sounds like the director's commentary was quite telling for a lot of things.
Yes. So, I would like to now get into a little bit of background info on this thing. I'm going to mention the books briefly because it's important for this movie's existence, but I'm going to save a lot of the lore behind the books. And by lore, I mean Christopher Paolini being 15 years old and homeschooled when he wrote this book, how it got mainstream published, etc., etc. We're going to save that for when we talk about the books themselves.
Of course, because we are going to eventually talk about the books themselves. They've got dragons in them.
They've got dragons in them, and they are a fascinating case of what it looks like when you got a little grease on your wheels in order to kind of get into the publishing industry from a very young age, and then also nobody ever tells you no. And that's all I'm gonna say about my thoughts on the books for now. As far as background context, the original Eragon book was traditionally published in 2002.
Uh-huh.
Eldest, its sequel, was released in 2005. This movie was released in 2006. I think these are things that are important to note because they were planning on filming Eldest and Brizinger back to back. And then, of course, the sequels got canned because hey, this movie was not only critically panned, commercially panned, it also just barely broke even as far money in movie industry works. This thing had a $100 million budget,
Oh my
which
god.
is which makes sense for 2006 when you look at that dragon. Like, hey, Saphira actually looks shockingly good, I
She
think.
looks really good in this, and also not to be giving not to be giving a lot of boss baby vibes on this, but 100 million is also the exact budget that the Dungeons and Dragons movie was aiming for. So I this is so surreal to me. This is a
Yes,
great
this
second
is
episode.
I am so glad that it worked out this way. In any case, $100 million budget. It made both when talking about domestic and international box offices, the take in was 250.4 million. If you know anything about movies and how the box office works, it is not enough to make back your budget. That is still
Yeah.
considered box office failure. The goal is 1.5 times your budget. Then you're kind of actually considered to have broken even. They did that almost exactly. So,
So they
so this
won.
thing, although it was in the US the 31st highest grossing movie of 2006, which considering how many movies come out, that ain't that bad. It was considered a kind of a box office failure, not a bomb, but a bit of a failure. Like they just broke even basically, as far as numbers are concerned. So yeah, this thing they can this thing kind of immediately. But the fact that there was one sequel already released, one more already in the works, and this is something again we'll talk about the books. This was originally supposed to be a trilogy of books, and then Brisinger got broken up into two parts. So they
Hmm.
knew kind of what the trajectory was as far as how many more movies we're making. That is so odd to me when watching this movie because it feels like set up in the worst way, and by that I mean the way they are setting up for the sequel is, well, I guess we'll include everything in the first book without actually thinking of how it could play out in movies that we are cutting down to be only an hour and 40 minutes long, which is nonsense for books that go from like 500 pages to nearly a end. You can't do that. This is very silly.
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah,
quite silly.
yeah. So, we have that. We have this knowledge that we are making multiple movies, and that is our background. So the books did get a fair amount of criticism, which, in my opinion, is somewhat warranted. To being similar to a few different properties, mainly that it is a mashup of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. But very seriously, you do get the sense that in making this, they were trying to go for a franchise of that scale and popularity, right? This is very
Yeah.
much like it's very much like a Twilight scenario of you get some young no-name actors in these roles. It's the Harry Potter thing of Daniel Radcliffe is now to a certain extent a big name. Robert Pattinson and Taylor Lautner and Kristen Stewart. And they
Or
continue
Mark
to try to
Hamill.
do this. Or Mark Hamill. Yes, exactly. Frodo Baggins actor Elijah Wood. These are movies and series that are meant to propel these people into stardom. For our purposes, that is actor Ed Speleers. He is playing Eragon. He's an England boy. This was meant to be his Harry Potter. Another actor who got offered the role was my man, Alex Pettifer. But he turned this
Oh.
movie down to do another project, that being, I think it's called Storm Runner. Hey,
What?
another of Alex Rider book series
Oh.
fame. That movie also fucking tanked. Also, Alex Pettifer was purportedly afraid of flying. He did not want to do this movie, so we got Ed Speleer, who I will say right out the gate, I think does a pretty decent job with the material that he's given. He obviously did not go on to become a household name, so I think that we have established the background enough for this movie. This is a movie about a boy wonder who get a dragon and go to war. That's what this is, right? And I think that's enough to get us to where we need to be to start talking about the movie specifically. the first thing that we see when we start up this thing is the delightful DVD menu.
Oh, we're gonna talk about this.
This is a Patreon only thing, definitely.
Right.
This'll get cut for the public release, but for
Although,
all our
for purposes of watching, we did watch this on a DVD borrowed from our local library. So that is the
yeah,
context in which we are watching this movie. I'm sure you can see it in other places, but support your local libraries.
support your local
Be a
library.
patron of these wonderful services.
They are truly wonderful. The one place that we found to watch it for quote unquote free is on Disney Plus because this is a 21st Century Fox release. They
Mm-hmm.
now own it. So if you have that service, that's where you can watch it. Otherwise, you had to pay for it. We do not have Disney Plus. We borrowed it from our local library. When we open on the movie, we are introduced to Allegasia right away by a voiceover, and I don't want to spoil quite yet who the voiceover is done by because I want to save that just a little bit
Yeah.
longer because I think it's fun. Basically, the information that we get is dragons and dragon riders used to be a thing. This fuck ass guy named Galbatorix, who was a dragon rider, decided, no, I don't like that other people have dragons actually, and I want to do a dictatorship. And so he kills all the other dragons, the dragon riders, and now he's king of the land. And in hearing about this, we also see Galbatorix for the first time. He is played by John Malkovich. And what a
Yes.
delight that is.
And as you pointed out to me, he is like the only person not doing a British accent. He
No.
is just talking like John Malkovich,
With
which,
with his square ass teeth,
yeah,
chewing the scenery like cud.
it's delightful. Something else we learn about in this intro is we learn about a faction called the Varden, who are freedom fighters in this war that, happens after Galbatorix does his big dragon rider destroying thing. And I guess they lost because they retreat into the mountains and now Galbatorix is looking for them.
Yes.
And one of their agents just stole something from him, which is referred to by Galbatorix, the narrator, and like three other people as a stone. And Diana, if you would like to.
I'm gonna
Oh, okay.
cut you off right there. We're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
I have a correction to make on our ends. Our listeners don't know about this.
Okay.
We fucked up where we spotted the dragon.
You're right. No, I was going to bring this up.
Because it's happening right now. We're watching dragons. We're
Yes,
seeing dragons in the air doing battle. It's like I want to say 30 seconds in.
it's
I will
really soon.
it's immediate. But oh my
It's like
god, the dragon.
a sweeping POV shot of like you're a drag from the POV of a dragon rider. You're on this dragon. You're fighting other dragon.
Correct. So that's hey, dragon spotted. We did it. More important than that, Stefan Fangmeyer has begun speaking on the director's
Oh,
commentary.
okay.
My first note in my director's commentary: this man has no riz. This is the driest talking capital G guy that you'll ever meet. I was stoked as soon dry ass tone just kind of rose from the depths of time and space and appeared before me in audio form over this movie. We do get important information from him because when we watched the movie, we were curious as to where it was filmed. We found 3 locations, those being Hungary, Slovakia, and Vancouver. And
Slovakia being funny because, again,
because
this is another weird similarity it has with the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which was filmed in the Czech Republic. So very close in terms of location.
yes. And here he gives us an explanation for why that is. Most of the movie was filmed in Hungary, and they moved to Slovakia specifically for aerial shots because it was more scenic. Hungary was not scenic enough, so this area, one of the aerial shots that we get is right at the beginning of the movie. This was specifically filmed in Slovakia. There's a couple more later, and then there's one shot in particular that he pointed to that's like this was in Vancouver.
Ah, I see.
So basically everything was filmed in Hungary, but it wasn't pretty enough, so they had to go to Slovakia and also Vancouver for a couple of shots. That's it. That's all I have to say. Now we could talk about the funny linguistic little farce that they do with the stone. That is
Right.
very, very obviously an egg.
It's so blatantly an egg, and the funniest part about this is all these characters who are referring to it as a stone absolutely 1000% are fully aware that it is an egg, specifically a dragon egg, because that's the whole reason they are fighting over it.
And we get this really funny, the first thing basically that gets said in this movie, other than the voiceover, is John Malkovich being like, I yearn for my
I
stone.
suffer without my stone.
That's
Don't
what it is.
prolong my suffering. Sorry,
It's so good.
it's hard to do John Malkovich's voice. He has such a distinct sound to him.
It's such a specific cadence, and it's why he's not doing an accent. It wouldn't be John Malkovich if he didn't sound like that. The character that he's specifically saying this to is named Durza.
Yeah.
He is an important character. He's our like actual main villain because he's the one that is going to pursue our hero on his quest. His name is Durza. He is a shade, which is a sorcerer possessed by demonic spirits and can only be killed with a stab to the heart. I say this now because we're going to forget to mention it later.
I wouldn't forget to mention that.
Oh. Well,
unlike our character Brahm, who forgets to mention it to Eragon when it really matters.
Yes,
but
correct.
But I digress. We're not there yet. We're here in some kind of fuck-ass cave with a big map on the wall with John Malkovich and his shabby, red-headed...
Yeah. And also,
I say shabby, but it's more disheveled. He's well dressed, he has fancy robes, but like they make him look kind of dehydrated, I guess would be the best way to describe him. Just, like that kind of like, ooh, he's kind of creepy look to him. Yeah, that they would give an evil.
They also, his hair is like a very distinctly dyed red color, and by that I mean it looks like they took those fucking little chalk hair coloring things. They came in little discs. You would see a commercial for it on fucking Nickelodeon in the late 2000s, but it's the kind like you press your hair in between and then you pull straight down and it's like chalk that lasts for like 2 hours so you can go to the club and sweat it off. That's what it looks like they did his hair dye with. It's great.
Yeah. It's quite a look, I will say. But yes. After John Malkovich says how he is suffering without his stone, he sends Durza out to pursue Arya, who we are introduced to through the narration, who is a member of the Varden who has stolen this stone in quotes, from King John Malkovich.
From King John Malkovich.
She's riding through the woods with an escort, and then suddenly they get blasted, and Durza is there now. Like I said, it's unclear as to when stuff is happening, because just in the prior scene, we were seeing the king talk to Durza, and right before that, we were seeing her ride through the woods. So it's a really weird situation where you're not sure when anything is happening, but Durza is casting, like, fire on the woods or whatever. But in the middle of this moment of peril, we cut away to a funny little thatch hut and a comically small title set over it. It is taking up maybe, like, 5% of the screen. It is so small.
It is as if they are embarrassed by this movie. And then, of course, we see titular character himself, Eragon, sneaking out of his home to do a little hunting with his bow.
Yeah, I referred to him in my notes at this point as not Luke Skywalker, because good God, they definitely did him up to look like Luke Skywalker. He is wearing a very similar outfit. His hair is very similar in terms of how it is styled, and this is not really to do with the movie, because I'm pretty sure this is the case in the book. He lives on a farm with his uncle. Like,
he lives on a farm with his uncle.
And is blonde.
Yeah, he is off to do some hunting to support his family. We are seeing him on this hunting trip in between cuts of Arya running through the forest, Durza chasing her. There is an attempt to distinguish the fact that this is happening in two very different locales. The scene with Arya and Durza, it's very much coded in reds and oranges. He's literally set the forest on fire. It's blazing around them. They apparently had to do that scene in one take, basically, because they only had one chance to set the fucking forest on fire, because, yeah, that's actual fire. Everything is
Yeah, that
on
makes
fire right
sense.
there. And then, so that's cutting between them and Eragon, and his is done up in cool greens and blues, neatly tying in the fact that Saphira is going to come along, and she's a blue dragon, so that's already going. But it's still two scenes in the woods, and we said this when the way that this scene kind of wraps up is Durza comes after Arya and she yells a word and teleports the egg so that he can't get it. And last we see of her, she has a telepathic connection to Eragon, I guess. Another thing the
Briefly.
movie just kind of it happens several times in the movie where we just kind of see that she can see what he's doing, and it's magic, so we don't have to explain it. And she passes out knowing that the egg is safely away. We talked about this when it happened, where we said, where the fuck are these characters in relation to each
Yeah.
other? And because they are both in some kind of wood, it just really muddies things. And I think that's one of the things where there are certain things that got changed in adaptation, and I don't know why this isn't one of them, where they could have put these two characters in a completely different locale. Arya is in the act of taking the egg from Galbatorix, so they're in some kind of soul or cave area, and it's very distinctly, oh, she teleports the egg away. But no, we're in the forest. We're in the forest, and it's confusing.
Yeah.
I
They talk a bit later on the destiny stuff and oh, you were destined to have this egg, Aragon, and whatnot, which I guess is why she teleports the egg, but it also led me to question of like, why didn't she do that earlier? And also, why didn't she just do that to herself?
mhm.
It's very. There's a lot that isn't explained that really ought to be. Like, we get a talk about how magic works later on, but not really. Like, it's hard to get a sense of the limitations of magic in this because it's very vague and not. But we'll talk
Yes.
about that when it comes up.
And I think part of that is, again, they're adapting a book that was written by a 15-year-old who was kind of taking his Barbies and mashing them together, which is a very fair way to write a story, right? And
Yeah.
I commend him for writing a 500-page book at age 15. However, we are not on the fucking playground anymore. This is a $100 million movie. These fuckers needed to change things, and they did. But they're like, cosmetic changes that made the fans mad. They're not the sweeping story changes that should have necessarily been made to make this feel like a legitimate project. Like, one of the things that actually comes up right now in the director's commentary are the changes that they made to the Urgles, which are, they're orcs, they're just orcs. But in the books, they have these massive, massive horns. And Stefan Fangmeyer in the commentary says, oh, fans got really mad because we took away the horns. But, I looked at them and said, well, I don't really want horns. I want to do something different. And
I
so
want
they
to
got
do
rid of the
something
horns.
different by doing more like a movie that already.
Yes. So there's that aspect, and there's also that aspect of like, but why? That's not a change that matters. And I actually do understand the very technical reason why. Horns that look natural on humans are really fucking hard to do, and they would have had to do that for like 50 people.
Yes.
That's I understand why they cut that, but don't bullshit me with, oh, we wanted to do something different. No, no, that's a hard thing to do, and it's understandable you
Yeah,
decided not
you're a
to do it.
special effects guy. You know how hard it is to do. I know why you made this decision.
I know why you made this decision. One, don't bullshit me, but also two, please change other things to make the movie make sense. In any case, Aragon now has the egg. And The
Yeah,
next thing,
he
sorry,
picks
the
it up.
stone.
Sorry, yeah, the
Yeah.
stone, which appears in like a smoldering crater in front of him as a result of the teleportation spell. And this scene is really funny to me because he picks it up and blows on it. But I guess they fucked up continuity or something because the egg is no longer steaming when he picks it up, and it's not dirty. He has no reason to blow on it, and I just think it looks funny. He just picking up this rock and blowing on it for no reason.
He
It's
now has
huge, by
his
the
egg.
way.
It's
Sorry.
huge.
I feel like we need to like clarify. This thing is bigger than his fucking head. It's like it is this oblong shape. It is the size of like a fucking watermelon. It's so fucking big.
And
And it
he has it
looks like it
now.
is made of precious stone.
He goes into his village, which I got the information. The people that populate the village who don't have speaking roles are just Hungarians that they pull off the side of the road or whatever.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
one of the first things that happens when he goes into the village is that we get a little bit of a conscription scene where a couple of farm boys are being dragged away. We have a soldier being like, oh, it's time to serve the king. The whole purpose of this is to be like, hey, the king is bad. He's conscripting to fight in a war that makes no sense that he started because he wanted to do some
Yeah.
killing. That's the
I
entire reason he did it. The reason that Eragon has brought this egg into the village is to sell it for money. He struck out on hunting. I'm gonna sell this egg. He
not even
takes it
sell
to
it. He's going to trade it.
presumably trade it for meat at the butcher shop. And we get a butcher, we get fantasy butcher, he's gruff and shit. He's pounding meat with a hammer.
Rubbing
In
all that meat.
handing over or trying to hand off this egg to this guy or this stone. I keep calling it an
Yeah.
egg because it's obviously a fucking egg, but
Yeah,
they're
well,
calling it a stone.
no, it's just a stone. It's just a regular giant gemstone that is larger than a adult man's head. I'm gonna trade it for a couple steaks.
He's handing off this stone and mentions that he found it in the spine. And at the mention of finding it in the spine, which is what those woods are called, the butcher says, I don't want anything to do with that. That's King's land. You take it back. I
Yeah.
find this to be very interesting because we never talk about the spine ever again.
Yeah. And I think it's fine because it gets across the idea of, oh, Aragon was doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing, and now he could get people in trouble. But
Sure,
I think it's
but
also funny that he would fucking tell the butcher that.
and also there's
Is he
this thing.
stupid?
Well, it's also this thing of like I think this would have worked fine because we already get this information that, oh, it's a stone that the king wants. Not because it's from the spine, but because it got magically teleported into his possession. That's why I'm questioning this, because I'm like, it doesn't actually matter that it's from the spine, though.
I
It
think
matters because it got magically teleported.
it has to be there because otherwise there's no reason for the butcher not to take this giant fucking gem off this stupid boy for like 2 pounds of meat.
Sure, but
Like,
then
there has to be a reason that. Because these are villagers who are so far removed from the main conflict, they don't even fucking know what a dragon rider is. Because that comes on later on in. Like, in a later scene that's basically implied that this is sort of a suppressed history and no one knows about or talks about it. So
sure.
none of these villagers would know this is something that belongs to the king or the king wants unless there was a secondary Now these
I
villagers know, oh, you can't take anything from the fucking king's force because they'll kill you. So when Eragon finds this thing that coincidentally is something the king's looking for, he finds it in the king's forest, so now the villagers know, hey, you shouldn't have that.
and I'm gonna argue against that for the very simple fact that as soon as Aragon brings it in, the butcher says, I don't want that, you definitely stole it. That is all the
Yeah.
explanation that you need. And this actually kind of ties into my issue with how the whole thing happens anyway. And this is writer Diana coming out to kind of say
Oh
this is
boy.
how I would have adapted it. And this all, mind you, this all comes down to the fact that this movie is 110 minutes long. They should not have directly adapted it in the way that they did because that means that now the movie doesn't make any fucking sense, right?
Wait, it's that short?
It's 110 minutes long. It's an hour and 40 minutes. this movie, it's bonkers. This
That's
is a bonkers
wild.
ass movie. Here's what you do. Eragon does not go into the fucking woods. Arya does not go into the fucking woods. Arya is caught trying to take the egg, and in a moment of panic, maybe she gets grabbed by somebody and is unable to transport herself based on the way that magic works, so she teleports the egg out of her hands, and it lands in front of Eragon while he is in bed sleeping. It magically appears in front of him while he is sleeping. He has no reason to believe this is just an object that he found in the woods because lightning struck or something. Like, where he can, like, justify, oh, I can probably just take this and sell it. No, this is, like, an inherently magical object. I probably shouldn't do anything with it. Again, to play devil's advocate, Aragon, as we discussed, is kind of fucking stupid with it, so
He's
maybe he
kind
would
of
have tried
fucking
to sell the
stupid.
stupid egg anyway. But right away, I think that gets rid of a lot of these problems that are immediately coming up where we're
Yeah,
saying, why are you doing this? I
because
just streamline your goddamn story is all I'm saying.
yeah, because like you could do a lot with that. You could have Aragon maybe not bring it to the butcher, but say like, "Oh, I have something I might be able to trade for this meat. Let me like, would this be of interest to you?" And then rumor goes around that hey, that farm boy might have found a big ass gem somewhere. We should.
Correct.
And then the guards who work for the king catch wind of it, and that goes up the chain, and then that sets off the whole. Because
Correct.
how that happens, meanwhile, like how that actually happens, is kind of weird. We're getting off track here with our tangent.
The one last point that I'll make of this, and I think why I specifically got set off now as to why I think the spine is dumb, is because in the director's commentary, Fangmeyer specifically points this as for the audience, thinking, oh, there's intrigue around the stone because he found it in the spire, or in the spine. Maybe the king will be interested because he found it in the spine. And that makes no fucking sense. We know,
Yeah.
of course, we're interested in the stone, Fangmeyer. An elf teleported it when she was in a forest fire because someone was trying to take it back from her.
You just had like 3 characters say, "Hey, this stone is important to the plot of the movie."
I am baffled endlessly by how incompetent this thing is. But
Yeah.
hey, it's a movie at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Oh my
saying
god.
for the audience is so funny because, like I was describing, this is so clearly for the characters and not the
No,
audience.
no.
No.
Director Stefan Fangmeyer needs you to be intrigued by the egg, because Eragon found it in the spine.
Okay, well, Aragon cannot fence the egg at the butcher, and he's a little disappointed by this, so he goes outside, and we see sitting under a string of quails and or pheasants. I'm not entirely sure what kind of bird they are specifically. A
Who cares?
rugged but familiar face being harassed by some soldiers. Ladies and
Take a,
gentlemen, it's Jeremy fucking Irons playing the
it's a
character of Brahm.
it's a Jeremy fucking Irons playing discount Han Solo and also Obi-Wan Kenobi at the same time.
Yeah,
Because that's what this character is.
and maybe Aragorn, and maybe Gandalf. Brahm is a lot of guys. This movie is an amalgamation of a lot of different things that are in fantasy movies. But yeah, I was so excited when I saw Jeremy Irons' name come up on like the pre-credits that roll before the title sequence,
Mm-hmm.
because I haven't seen this movie in a very long time, and I saw it at a time where I did not give a shit about actors at all. So I did not fucking remember that Jeremy Irons, of all people, was in this, but I was so delighted when I saw,
Yes.
because Jeremy Irons puts on a great performance in this
It
movie
really
and in
does.
most movies.
And of course, he was in our last pick, Dungeons and Dragons 2000, which was a coincidence that we did not know going into this.
Yes.
It is also, of course, relevant now to say he was, of course, the voiceover at the beginning of the movie. This was the little thing I wanted to keep secret for just a little
Yeah.
bit longer.
And we see rough and gruff Brahm sitting on this stoop, and these soldiers are harassing him for his quails. And he does not take them seriously whatsoever.
No.
they're like, oh, well, we're claiming these quails for the king, and he goes for his knife for a moment, but then decides like, oh, this isn't worth it. But you get the sense that he was perfectly capable and willing of just killing all of them. You get that kind of tense moment where he just goes, all right, you know what, fuck it, fine, take the stupid birds, leave me alone.
The entire point of this scene is to say, oh, hey, Jeremy Irons might have it. Brom might be kind of cool with it.
Ron might be
He's
kind of
like
cool with it.
He's like cool.
But
Before we
yeah,
move on, I want to interject just a little bit more about Jeremy Irons.
okay.
There's an interview with him where he said that he took the role to reintroduce himself to a younger audience, despite the fact that the last fantasy effort that he was in fucking bombed.
Was Dungeons and Dragons 2000.
He also went on record in this interview saying that Eragon was better managed than Dungeons and Dragons 2000.
Now that doesn't surprise me. That one does not surprise me from how much I now know about the production of Dungeons and Dragons. That's a given. I think most movies are better managed than that one was.
So we've established Brom.
Mm-hmm.
And now we go on, we follow Eragon back to the farm where we're introduced to more fucking characters who don't matter. His cousin Roran is here. They look exactly alike. We had difficulty.
Look so fucking similar. It is insane that they cast them this way. I will have to look through the book and see if Roran is described as looking exactly like Eragon, because listeners, I am not exaggerating. They look exactly the fucking same.
The only way
lose track of who is who between cuts.
The only way I was managing to tell them apart was Roran kind of looks like Ansel Elgort, and Eragon's actor has like a thicker bottom lip. That was like the only thing that really kept them apart in my mind, and even then I kept losing track.
Well, I don't know who Ansel Elgort is, so I was completely lost.
Roran is doing farm things, and Eragon shows up, and they get into like a little bit of a boy fight. They do some boy.
Him.
They kind of like pick up rakes and such to simulate sword fighting, and I think this is supposed to give us kind of a glimpse, like, oh, you know, Eragon, he might have the sauce. He might just like be a natural sword fighter. Like he's gonna like take to sword fighting, which is very fucking funny because we have a scene in the movie that directly says, no, that's not fucking true.
Yeah. I think it's like, oh, he's dreaming for grander things. Look at him. Oh, he's ready. He's ready to take up a sword and go on a quest and everything. Which is funny because Eragon almost immediately contradicts his uncle in the very next scene. Because Roran, after the events of this little play fight, says to him, hey, by the way, I'm gonna go draft dodge because I'm about to turn army age and I don't want to get conscripted, so I'm just gonna leave.
Before we move on from the boy fight, important notes about the boy fight from the director's commentary. Both of them got injured doing this. This is them. They do not have stunt doubles. Ed Speleers, Eragon got knocked on the face with like one of the things, and apparently his eye like swelled up. So I don't know if they covered it with makeup for parts of the movie where you had to still film, or if they just waited for the swelling to die down. But yeah, he got hit in the face, and a board fell on Roran's actor.
Oh my god!
He got conked on the head with like a ceiling board that fell.
Maybe they had Roran step in for Eragon's scenes and just ADR'd him, because honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell.
We wouldn't have known. Oh, before we move on to the part where Roran and Eragon have a little chat, we get a brief moment where Eragon puts the egg upstairs, and he like taps on it with his fist, and it makes a cool musical note sound. My notes on this, hey, why aren't you covering that thing up to keep it warm? That's like the thing that you do with eggs. You live on a farm, you should know better.
Well, it's because it's a stone.
Oh, that's right, it's a stone. My bad, sorry, I keep forgetting. Everyone. He just thinks it's a cool rock. I forget.
Yeah, a big fucking rock.
Apparently, for this, they shot an additional, not even additional scene, but just a little bit more, where he takes a mallet and he hits the stone with a mallet, and it makes even a cooler sound. But they cut that out of the movie because they thought it was too comical.
I agree that it's comical, but how dare they cut that out? How dare they
How
cut out
dare
this
they?
fucking caveman trying to figure out what the deal with this rock is?
That scene is not important, but I wanted to mention it
Just
just because I thought that was funny.
starts playing the fucking Land Down Under opening on it. Do, do,
Yes.
do, 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 do.
Then we get the scene with Eragon and Roran. They're both working on the farm. They have like a potato farm, and apparently these are real potatoes that they are actually digging up. Delightful.
That's wild. Did they, like, have a potato farm planted for this, or did they just throw some fucking potatoes in the ground for them to dig
I
up?
it kind of sounds like they buried a couple of potatoes and made them dig them up.
That's really funny.
So this is the moment where Roran, who we gather is a year or so older than Eragon. We know that Eragon later, he tells us directly he's 17, so Roran is probably like 18 or 19, and he's about to be conscripted into the army, and he tells Eragon, I'm going to dodge that. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
run away.
leaving. I'm leaving. I'm
I
fucking off.
and once again, we have something that I don't know why it's in this movie. Thorin
Mhm.
as a character in this movie doesn't make any sense to me because he becomes very, very important in the second book. I forget if he returns to the town first or if he finds another town and he helps them out. But the village in the book gets destroyed because they are looking for Eragon, and also now they are punishing him for having this dragon and for like kind of keeping it from them.
Yeah.
And so Roran's role in the next book is to rescue the people who manage to avoid the fire, and then also kind of to start a militia to start taking down Galbatorix's reign from like the peasant perspective, because Eragon is off doing like his fuck ass magic tour or whatever, and he's with the Varden, and they have like their own thing going on. But Roran is important as the person who is starting a rebellion from the inside.
He's the grassroots.
That is the reason that he's in this movie, and he did not need to be. Here's how I personally would have written that. He's not in the movie. You get a scene where Eragon is like hoeing the potatoes, and Eragon is kind of portrayed as a bit of a brat. Like, he's a reluctant hero type.
Very
And that
reluctant, I'll say.
he's extreme, like, he's reluctant to the point where it doesn't work. But going with that angle, he's hoeing the potatoes. Oh, this sucks. Like, I can't, Roran, he used to be here to help me, and now he's not. And I have to hoe the stupid potatoes by himself. And then his uncle comes out and reminds him, well, he didn't just get up and leave. He left to dodge the draft. Like, he was going to be drafted into an army to fight a war that we don't agree with. That is
Yeah.
all that you need to say about Roran. And it takes out multiple scenes in this movie that are completely unnecessary. That's kind of all I have to say. Once again, I know this is a little bit beyond the scope of this movie specifically, but I think it's important to point out just how weird of an adaptation this is, because they cut so much but then keep in stuff that doesn't, to me, does not make sense to keep. And
Yeah.
that's where I'll kind of end that.
It's especially noticeable because once Roran is gone, he leaves in like the next scene after that. Once he's
Yes.
gone, he is never mentioned, like, or acknowledged ever again for the remaining runtime of this movie, and we are only like 15.
Yes. This is another reason why I think Roran should have been cut. It would give us more time to establish Eragon's relationship with his uncle, because, hey, reminder, Eragon is Luke Skywalker in the situation. His uncle ain't making it very much longer.
Yeah,
Spoilers.
his uncle, when he's talking him through Roran's decision to leave, his uncle just basically starts waving a bunch of death flags at Eragon. Oh, when your mom abandoned you. He doesn't say abandoned, but like when your mom left you with me. I was excited to have another son, and I've loved you like a son. And Eragon, you're gonna move on to greater things, and you won't need your old uncle anymore soon. And Eragon, like we said, very reluctant hero. He's like, nah, that's bullshit. I want to just stay and be a farmer forever. I think it's cool, actually. I don't want to do anything. I like this agrarian life where nothing happens to me ever. Which is really funny because this is polar opposite of basically every fantasy hero ever.
And his uncle kind of pushes back on that by saying, like, oh, those are your dreams now, but your dreams could change.
Yeah, but
You
thou
might
must.
follow the call of the unknown.
Yeah,
And
your uncle
it's
might die, and you might be forced from your home, Eragon.
Eragon, I have approximately 2 seconds of this movie left. You might be pulled away by
Eragon, the end of this
circumstances.
conversation is my last spoken line.
Then, after this, we get the Luke Skywalker fucking moment where
Yeah,
Aragon is he's like sitting somewhere. He's got his knee propped up, his
yeah.
elbow resting on it. He's
It
looking at the
is
sky.
Yeah, it is straight up the twin suns shot from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Unquestionably, that's what that is.
I thought for certain that in the director's commentary, Stefan Fangmeyer was going to say, "Yeah, no, we pulled this directly from Star Wars. Like it's an homage moment. It felt right." That I expected him to say. Here's what he
Really?
says instead. Yeah, Ed didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, so when you're looking at him, he's kind of, he looks a little bit sleep deprived. His face is all puffy, and I don't know. Like when I was filming it, I wasn't so sure how it would turn out, but like I don't know. I
What?
think it works. And so afterwards, I told him like, "Hey, bud, you gotta get more sleep," and then we
He's
move on.
facing away from the camera in that shot. You can't see his face. What the... Stefan, what the fuck are you talking about?
The commentary is filled with shit like that. It bounces back and forth between Stefan Fangmeyer being like a guy summarizing the movie. Like that's a lot of his commentary is him being like, "Yeah, so we filmed this scene to show you that Aragon is really sad." Like you hear him talking about how he's sad right now. He's really sad, and that's important for us to convey. And shit like this, where he's just like giving you anecdotes about filming the movie that reveals so much, in my opinion, about where his fucking priorities are.
Yeah.
like I love dumb commentary like this. I love silly stories where we're like, "Oh yeah, here's something goofy that happened while we're filming." But like so far, a lot of this stuff has been like, "Oh yeah, there's a cool stunt where Arya fell off her horse. That was the horse didn't get injured. Don't worry about that." And yeah, we set the forest on fire in this shot. And yeah, both of my actors got injured in this scene while filming. And looks really tired here. Those are his color commentary comments.
Yeah.
What a delight.
I'm really getting a sense that this guy has not directed much.
Well, Heather, did
Yeah,
you know
and
that this was his one and
yeah,
only direction?
yeah, as you mentioned, that is in fact the case.
So, we have our Luke Skywalkers. And
Mm-hmm.
now that we've established Luke Skywalker, oh, he's sad and yearning for adventure, but actually he's totally not. We got verbal confirmation that's not what he's.
Adventure is silly, actually. I'm super into farming potatoes forever.
We cut to another scene in his bedroom, loft area. He sleeps in hay.
In the
And oh my
hayloft,
god. Oh my
I'll
god.
went to creep.
Oh my god, the egg. The egg is cracking.
The stone, you mean?
The
This
stone, sorry,
stone
the
is
stone.
cracking, which is
It's
a weird thing
rattling
for
all
a
over the
stone
floor.
to do. And oh my
It's
god,
rattling.
it was an egg the
Hey,
whole time.
it's an egg the whole time. Aragon, as he's watching the egg, looks kind of vaguely concerned, and that's it. And then the egg hatches, and this is in my notes where I say, "Oh my god, dragon spotted," but that's not true. We already
That's
spotted
not
the
true.
dragon,
Yeah,
but
the
but
the
but
tit
the
the
main dragon.
yeah the main dragon. This is baby Saphira, and she's adorable.
She's so cute.
She's so cute. She's like a little kitten. It's great. I will say, not nearly wet enough for having just come out of an egg. I've seen
No,
shit that just comes out of an egg. It's gross looking. They're covered in
it's
egg
yeah,
juice. Something I need to, like, establish here. This is where my rant comes in, because...
yeah,
And this is something that bothered me about Aragon's character throughout the entirety of the movie.
yeah.
Aragon has basically no reaction to, like, anything that's happening to
No,
him. A fucking dragon just hatched out of this egg. He has the same reaction to seeing it as one would, like, see a cool bug. He's just like, oh, hey, look at that.
hey,
Like,
look at that.
no, he doesn't ask any questions. He's not like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? I've never seen anything like that before in my fucking life. Because, hey, as established, he fucking hasn't. He just kind of has... He's just mildly bemused at all this wondrous shit that is now happening to him. He had no reaction to finding a gemstone. As far as he is aware, a gemstone twice the size of his fucking head Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, if I'm like a fucking simple pastoral farm boy, I'm shitting and pissing myself. Like, what are you talking about? How do you have no reaction, no questions, no anything? He is just in a constant state of, well, I guess this is happening now, which is not great for your premier adventure protagonist. He seems like
Yeah.
he could just take or leave anything that's happening to him.
When Saphira hatches from the egg, and this is not her name yet, but we're just gonna call her Saphira because it's easy.
Yeah.
She sends out like psychic beams to all the important characters of the movie. Braum gets a reaction shot. Galbatorix has a reaction shot. Pretty sure
Yeah.
Durza has a reaction shot. And Arya has a reaction shot, which, fun thing that this poor actress does, like, every time she is required to, like, be in pain or have a reaction, she looks a little bit like she's gonna come.
She does. I get the feeling we're gonna have one of those in every one of these movies.
Yeah, it's her in this movie.
This
Yeah.
happens specifically as Eragon is like reaching out to pet Saphira, and Eragon gets like a brand on his hand. There's like a bright flash of light,
Yeah.
and every important person feels that moment.
Yes.
And it's like this weird like spiral coming from like the palm line of his hand.
And then Heather,
And
he
then
goes to bed.
he goes to bed. Yeah.
He goes to bed and he wakes up the next day.
He doesn't see the
Goes
brand until he wakes up, which is really funny because that happened and then I guess he just didn't look at his hand for the
Yeah.
rest of the day.
He was like, ow, ooch, ow, 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 ow. Okay.
Deeply incurious protagonist.
Then we move on to a scene that is fucking delightful. We see Galbatorix once again.
Yeah.
We get a bit of a wide shot of his throne room, which is straight up just a fuck-ass cave.
It's just a fuck-ass cave. There
It's
is
a
like
fuck-ass
no
cave.
lighting. There is one brazier directly next to where he's sitting and nothing else. It is barren. There is barely even a throne.
He's sitting on, it's a cool throne, like it's got like a dragon wing on it, but it's just
Yeah.
in the middle of this rock cave. And then beside him is a map of Allegasia. And behind the map are noises. Kind of like growling noises that we don't worry about right now. Don't worry about those right now.
Why would
Stephen
I be?
Fangmeyer, or Stefan Fangmeyer, does credit himself with coming up with Galbatorix living in a cave because it's isolated. It's isolated. No one knows where he is.
That's a weird idea, man. It's a weird idea for nobody to know where the king is living. That's kind of not how a king works. He's the ruler of everything. Why would he need to be isolated in a fucking cave? It's a shittier cave than the rebels he drove into the mountains have.
He's here with his boy Durza, his little piss boy that he sends off to do his dirty work. And this is the moment where I said they should kiss because John Malkovich gets like really close to Durza's face. He's telling him to like go after Eragon, go get his rock, go get my rock back.
Yeah. With his fucking gross nails, he has like Hugh Hefner nails.
And I have some information about the nails, Heather.
Oh boy.
First things first, John Malkovich is apparently a delight to work with, according to Stefan Fangmeyer. John Malkovich was the one who took the lead on getting these nails done. He apparently told Stefan Fangmeyer, yeah, you know, I did stage work in my past. I acted on stage. I got this. He heated up pieces of plastic and painted them himself, and then stuck them on his fucking fingers. He did that. That's what John Malkovich contributed to this movie. Those nails were not like something that according to the director. It's one guy, no one is fact checking him while he's doing the commentary, but that is what he tells us about John Malkovich. He sends Durza off, and Durza goes to his silly little fort, and he summons the Razak, which are these gross kind of bug zombie dudes and they're magical creatures, and they're summoned from the earth, and they're made of bugs, and they're gonna go after Eragon.
They're Nazgul. Like, let's not fucking mince words. These are the fucking Nazgul from Lord of the Rings.
Another thing to comment on from director's commentary. I find this director's commentary so fascinating, and there's going to be a point where I stop talking about it because it stops being interesting. But this part is, when Durza summons the Razak, he is kind of like standing above a pit full of fire, and when we see the Razak, they like come up out of the ground, and that it's shot overhead, so we're looking down at them. My assumption when I saw this is that they're being summoned in front of Durza, right?
Yeah.
Because he's above them and looking down. No, they're not. They're
Oh.
in a completely different area. He's summoning
What?
them in, I think, the spine, the forest generally, but I think specifically the spine. And I bring this up because Stefan Fangmeyer says, yeah, so we kind of tried to distinguish, like, with color grading again, and also by having them in separate shots, that he's summoning them in a different area. I don't know if that came across in the film, but we
It
tried our
didn't.
best.
It didn't come across, Stefan. It came so little across, actually. It's still on the same side of the river, Stefan.
And I'm razzing this guy a lot because this movie deserves to be razzed. But there are a couple of really great shots, and he does point them out, and actually one of them is coming up, and I'll use that to lead into the discussion of this scene.
Before we talk about this, there is a
Sure.
moment we kind of skipped over that I want to establish. Eragon has
Okay.
a moment with Saphira, who is visibly bigger at this.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
she is visibly bigger at this point. It's not really acknowledged by Eragon. It is really unclear if time has passed or not. But Saphira is bigger, which you think would imply that time has passed. But as we go through into other scenes, nothing else implies that, so she's just kind of arbitrarily bigger. And Eragon kind of trauma bonds with Saphira over their collective lack of mom.
We
Saphira is
can't
still
have
very
moms in
cute.
fantasy. She's
Yeah.
great. That actually helps with the lead in to this next scene, both in terms of there being very good shots in this, and I want to give the movie credit where credit is due. There's some great shots in it, but also like the fucky wucky passage of time and this background information explaining that. Aragon goes into the village to like the community eaten area, I guess. There's benches and people are eating stew. I guess they didn't have ovens in ye olden days, so it makes sense that they would gather to eat warm food,
It,
etc.,
it
etc.
reminds me of a pavilion where everyone goes to
Yes.
eat.
Aragon, I forget exactly. The guys are shooting the shit, and we get this very good shot of Brahm through candlelight to establish that he is also here. That's a very good shot.
Yeah.
And
Here, but
this is
apart from everyone.
there's another shot where he's hovering over the fire and there's this very cool backlighting to it. There are some good shots in this, and I want to, again, I want to give that credit.
Yeah.
This is the moment where Brahm, there are soldiers here, and they're kind of telling him to quiet down because he starts talking about dragons and dragon riders. And we get the sense that this is the first time that Aragon is maybe ever hearing about dragons and dragon riders. So he's at last getting that necessary context of, oh, Saphira is like part of this legacy that no longer exists, right? And that's something that comes up in Brahm's speech, and the soldiers are trying to quiet him down at this point. Aragon says, let him continue. And Brahm says, the time of dragons and dragon riders will come again. And
For some reason, they do let him continue, even though Brahm is explicitly saying, yeah, we're gonna kill the king and make him pay for all that bullshit he did 50 years ago. And they're
and
like, oh,
the
what the
other,
fuck? And Aragon's like, wait, no, let him cook. And they're like, oh, okay.
which is also very funny to me because the way that Eragon kind of takes this going forward, and also the vibe of it in the moment, is that Jeremy Irons is saying like this incredible like factual stuff, like this is important, meaningful information that he's getting. Whereas the way that it's phrased and is coming off in performance is this is like a political speech. This is a speech of hope and kind of rallying together a broken society kind of deal. It's a very odd tone, is all I'll say. To go back to the thing about fucky wucky time and such, Fangmeyer reveals that this scene in the original script was meant to come way earlier in the movie, like specifically before Saphira hatched.
Oh.
So,
Oh.
which makes sense when you think about it in a vacuum, because you're like, oh, maybe that's why Aragon wasn't all that surprised when the egg hatched. But also, I
Yeah.
think thus contributes to, again, this sense of being lost in a vacuum of time when it comes to anything happening.
Yeah. And I think that also clicks for me that that was out of sequence because in the very next, something I didn't really register at the time, but there is very clearly an ADR insertion of, and then Brahm said in this story he was just telling me, as he's talking to Saphira. Because that line comes before they actually cut to Eragon. It's like just an establishing shot and you hear that dialogue.
This is the scene that had people crying. People hate this scene, and I think that's very funny and also very understandable. Eragon has Saphira. She's once again noticeably bigger. He's like running down a bit of a hill, clearly trying to get her to lift off in the air. She lifts off, she flies. She's a little clumsy, but she manages to do it. Flies into the clouds. She cut to Eragon. He looks a little sad. He kind of thinks like she's not coming back, like she's flying off. We cut to Saphira in the clouds. Yes. And she gets like struck by lightning. And then
explodes.
Very quickly just turns into a big ass massive dragon.
Yeah, and when I first saw this scene in the movie, I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, I see, these like lightning flashes are like implied time jumps, and this is like, oh, we're seeing Saphira steadily grow into a like fully grown dragon, and we're watching like the results of this repeated like tossing her into the air and her going and coming back, and we're seeing, you know, like this is a cool like implied passage of time shot. I really like this. And then she lands, and it is literally 10 seconds after Eragon threw her in the air the very first time. This literally happened in real time in front of us. She just got big.
Fangmeyer justifies this in the commentary, and this is where it first comes up. This is an exact quote, I wrote this down. Since the bad guys were out looking for them, we wanted to keep the momentum.
Hey. I have something that you could have done. You didn't have to do this.
You could have shown the development of their fucking relationship?
Yeah, one, that's not keeping the momentum. You didn't build any momentum. Momentum implies a gradual build-up and a steady sustaining. No, you kind of just pushed us very quickly forward. That's like if, oops, I accidentally pressed the gas instead of the brake on my car, and we lurched forward very suddenly. I wouldn't call that momentum. Secondly, hey, they don't fucking know where Eragon is at this point. He lives in a fucking bum-ass village in the middle of nowhere. Why would anybody... You literally keep showing this huge-ass map. You have John Malkovich talk about how much fucking territory he has to cover to look for his enemies. Like, you set up perfectly why Eragon could go undiscovered for all this time. You could have it be, oh, they're busy looking for his brother, or not his brother, his cousin, who fucking draft dodged, so they don't really give a shit about Eragon right now in the context of his immediate, like, area. Like, what are you doing?
Important note. Saphira getting all big in the sky. It makes Eragon's little palm go, ow, ow, ow!
Ooh, ow! Ooh, ouch!
Ow! Ouch!
Ouch, my hand!
This is also now when Saphira begins talking. She names herself Saphira.
Yeah, not even names herself. She just kind of lands on the ground and has fully formed thoughts and backstory. Like, oh, Eragon, you have unlocked my dialogue. Here is who I am as a character. Like, this is the first time they're meeting.
Yes. She's waited 1,000 years to hatch. And that's most of the information that we get. Next scene. Eragon goes to the village again. And I guess because Brahm gave his little speech and talked about dragons, Eragon is like, oh, maybe he has info about dragons. So he breaks into Brahm's shitty little hut. We find a beautiful illuminated manuscript.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
And it's gorgeous. And there's candles fucking everywhere. You made comment on this, I think, both times we watched the movie together, that holy shit, there's so much candles, there's so much wax pouring everywhere. This was something that the director of photography pushed for. There was so much wax melting and getting everywhere that they had to keep cleaning it up to prevent it from messing up their sound equipment. Oh my god.
Yeah, you can
Braum,
fucking tell. It's like, it looks like hair coming off of some of these candles. The strands are so long. And also, I just want to point out, you say, oh, Eragon decides to go into Brahm's house. We have no fucking idea whose house this is for a solid, like,
that's
3 minutes.
fair. We don't know until Braum bursts out of the darkness and is like, "What the fuck are you doing here? Why are you touching my shit?"
Why are
And,
you in my fucking house, Eragon?
and Eragon doesn't really explain himself well.
Like, is it true
And
what you were saying?
did the political statement that you have, does that mean anything, or are you just saying shit? And Braum is like, "Get the fuck out of here." And he does. Someone
Not before
says,
Eragon called coward, bitch boy
"Coward."
coward.
He says the line, "Better ask forgiveness than permission," in response to why he was giving his political speech, which makes no fucking sense because
Yeah,
who are you asking forgiveness from? The
yeah.
king? The
He,
king
he
who killed everyone?
Yeah, he also doesn't really ask for forgiveness from the soldiers. He just kind of does whatever he wants and gets off scot-free without really asking for it.
Yeah.
It's funny, but we mentioned this line because Braum will say it later and it will still not make any sense.
Yes. The last bit of detail to take note of from the scene is that Braum pulls out a very cool looking sword. It's got like a red blade and a gemstone in the hilt or the pommel or whatever it's called. That wraps that up as far as we
Yeah.
care.
You also get a sense of, like, paranoia surrounding Braum, because, like, one of the first things he asks Eragon is, like, when Eragon brings up dragons, Braum immediately is like, did anyone fucking follow you to my house? Like, does anyone know you're here?
Well, apparently somebody has gotten wind of the fact that Aragon's been doing some dragon shit because on his way back to the farm, he passes by the butcher shop and
Yes.
we see and hear the butcher getting fucking bodied by Rozax as they ask him about who brought the stone in, who is this boy, where can we
Yeah.
find
We
him,
don't
etc.,
Yeah,
etc.
we don't hear them actually speaking. We just hear the
Oh,
tail
that's
end
right.
of the butcher snitching on Eragon, being like, "Oh yeah, that guy. He lives up the road. He had a weird rock. You could go find him there." They kill him. They kill him. Snitches get stitches. But
There's a
Eragon
cool
has the fucking. But that would lead them here moment, and also the Star Wars like, "Oh no, my uncle" moment.
Yeah, so he starts running back to the farm, but before he gets there, Saphira fucking swoops down and picks him up
He fucking
and is like
scoops him.
she scoops him because she doesn't want him to get hurt by this, which makes sense. But we
Yeah,
do get our
she calls him
first
stupid.
there's the first of several delightful flying sequences. Apparently, Ed Spaliers did most of the stunt work while riding Saphira. It's all blue screened, and only occasionally it's a CGI double. He's like flipping and doing shit on
Oh shit.
to get this stuff
Oh, like they
done,
have
which
like
is
a
very
big
fun.
rig that he's just like kind of monkeying around on. That's fun.
Correct. He's getting like thrown around and shit apparently on set, which I always think is fun.
It is.
She drops him off in a pile of hay because she's not like big or strong enough for him to ride.
And he's
And
thrashing
so
around a lot.
yeah, he's not being cooperative. He gets dropped into hay. He comes up out of it. He's soaking wet now. We don't know how that happened.
I
And
guess the
of
hay was
course,
wet.
and of course, his uncle is dead.
His uncle's dead as fuck, but he barely looks hurt. He has like a little bit of blood on his head, and Aragon just kind of finds him with some hay sprinkled on top, just laying dead in his house. I don't know
Yeah,
what happened to him, but Aragon's very upset by his uncle being dead as fuck.
yeah. He yells at Saphira. It's meant to kind of cause tension between them, where he's like, "Get away from me! I never want to see you again." And
Yeah, he's
she
like, "Oh, it's your fault. I could have been here to help my uncle." But also, again with the time thing, how the fuck did they get here before him?
she's a dragon, could
Like,
and she's going by
Eric,
air. Was she
yeah,
not faster than them?
but also like Eragon was literally there as the Razak were just finding out the information of where he lived. And he gets there and they are already like done and gone by the time he
Yeah,
gets to his fucking house. Like, when the fuck did this happen? And also, he gets there at dawn inexplicably when it is the dead of night when he's in the village.
yeah.
Like, I have no idea when this shit is happening.
Well, Braum also gets here in
Yeah.
due time to more or less say to Aragon, like, "Get your shit together. We got to get you out of
Yeah.
here." He
He's
also notices the scar on
yeah.
Aragon's palm and says, "Oh shit, you're a dragon rider. Where's your dragon?" And Aragon's
Not
like,
even that,
"I
he
told
just
her to fuck
goes,
off."
yeah. Not even that, he just goes, "You?"
you?
Implying he already fully understands what Eragon's situation is just by seeing the brand.
And then Eragon says, I'm not leaving until I bury my uncle, and then Brom burns his house down.
Yeah, Brom just sets his fucking house on fire.
Funeral fit for a king, throws Eragon on horseback, and then as they're leaving, we turn around, we see the farm is burning down.
It's raining.
And...
It's raining, and the fucking barn, it is like fucking Burning Man. This barn has to have been made out of like pure fucking kerosene. It's insane how big this fire is.
Well, they might have actually put kerosene on it because, Heather, they actually burned down that farm that they built. That is the farm actually on fire. So you know what?
So
they
cool.
they probably used accelerants.
Yeah. So they definitely shot this last, right?
Well, not necessarily. Well, last out of the farm scene.
Yeah.
You know.
Damn.
House is burned down. Eragon and Brom are on horseback for a little while. We once again struggle to note how much time has passed, because where are they? What the fuck is happening? But once they stop for a little rest, for a little sit down, Brom explains the plot to Eragon.
Yeah. He also says another one of his recurring lines. He refers to Eragon as being 1 part brave, 3 parts fool, when Eragon is like still complaining that he could have definitely taken the weird freaky bugmen. And Brom says, well, you wouldn't be able to take them. They're assassins sent by Durza. And Eragon is like, I could take Durza. And Brom's like, you fucking idiot child. You don't know anything. This is where he tells Eragon what a shade is. He says, oh, a shade's a sorcerer possessed by demonic spirits, as we explained earlier, but does not mention the one other thing about shade, which will come back to bite this cast of characters later on. He doesn't explain anything about himself.
No. Oh, he does also, important to note, Saphira lands. She was never that far behind. She never actually left. She lands. Brom starts hitting on her, question mark.
Yeah, he starts doing our job for us and raiding this dragon. He talks about her like fucking supple curves or some shit. I don't think he uses that exact phrase. He does talk about her curves. And he's like, strong hind, handsome scale work or whatever.
And also this is where we get the information that if a rider dies, so does the dragon. It doesn't work the opposite way, but this is part of why we need to keep Eragon alive, because if he dies, Saphira does too. And, hey, all the other dragons are dead. It's important that we have a dragon who's on our side.
Yeah. Basically tells Eragon to quit fucking around and actually take this shit seriously. Stop refusing the call to adventure, you fucking weirdo.
So we cut back for a second to Durza's castle. He is now commissioning the Urgles to do some killing, as in go after Eragon. Again, Urgles are just not orcs. They're just orcs, but they're not orcs.
It is comical, because with the lack of horns and everything, these are just bald dudes.
They are, to quote Stefan Fangmeyer, the biggest Hungarians that we could find.
Okay, that's fun. These dudes are pretty fun. But yeah, we cut to what's essentially Isengard for the purposes of this movie. This, like, secondary base and fortress that Durza is hanging out in and has his army kind of prepping for war, I guess. They're, like, pounding weapons and whatnot. Yeah. Durza comes in and takes what looks like a fucking bat'leth from Star Wars from one of them and is like, oh, the Razak failed to kill the boy. And then he gets mad at the Urgles for some reason about this. He stabs the guy in the foot and is like, yeah, my other guy's fucked up, so now I'm sending you. Go get him. Like, I don't get what he's trying to establish here. It's a really weird threat demand thing he's doing. But here, 40 minutes into the movie, here is where I want to talk about the whole war aspect of this. Specifically because of this moment is so similar to Lord of the Rings in, like, how it is shot, how it comes in, and how we get this moment of, okay, I'm sending out my army against the protagonists. This is a moment that happens basically 1-to-1 in Lord of the Rings. I want to talk about it here because it does not make any fucking sense. Like, in Eragon. In Lord of the Rings, not to, like, talk about Lord of the Rings here, but I'm going to be very brief with this of, like, They do a very good job of establishing that a ongoing conflict is happening. We constantly see, either through the eyes of our protagonists, through the direction of our antagonists, or through just scenes and establishing shots of otherwise irrelevant characters dealing with this. We actually see a war going on. We see villages get raided and pillaged by armies. We see, soldiers on the warpath kind of bump into our characters and be like, hey, who the fuck are you out here on the warpath, you weird stranger? There is the presence of actual armies, of troops moving back and forth. Our protagonists have to be wary of that. They have to go around things. They have to plan around that. And we get to see the progression of this army being built throughout the movie. Every time we cut back to it, we see a little more of like the forest burned down. We see more forges being like big pits of iron being mined out as this army is built up for this war. And we see none of that in Eragon.
Yeah.
Apparently a war is already happening. We get these shots that implies like, oh, these troops are just now being amassed. Oh, Durs is going to the Urgles now and sending them out. They're building weapons for something. We have this fortress that's somewhere, and unless we are directly pointing the camera at our antagonist and their goo, they don't exist. We don't see them until they are directly attacking our characters or directly getting orders from the villains. There is no in-between. There's no sense of space. There's no sense of time. There's no sense of an actual fucking war happening. And when Braum and Eragon are riding, they're just out in the fucking wilderness. We don't know where they're going.
Once again, I think a big part of that is this is suffering from an adaptational sickness where most of the first book is just from Eragon's perspective and is very much about his growth and development into a hero. This movie wants to be more traditionally epic fantasy. And I'm going to kind of define two terms here as I have understood them for a very long time. High fantasy versus epic fantasy. Some people don't distinguish them this way, but I think it's genuinely helpful to. High fantasy is, your typical kind of medieval generally historical inspired fantasy. You're following one character on some kind of adventure, whatever. And a lot of times it is very focused on a psychological conflict at the core of it. And by that, I just mean generally that character, their growth and development, and then interaction with the world, as opposed to broader socioeconomic constructs that are being kind of impressed upon this person, and that's the only driving force, right?
Yeah.
Versus epic fantasy, wherein that's sociological construct, that is the driving force of the plot, and you have multiple characters that you're following and watching that being impressed upon. And oftentimes, yes, there is a psychological element of them thinking things through, but a lot of times it is their reactions wholly as to like what is being impressed upon them by outside forces, right? The Inheritance Cycle, the book series, more or less evolves from high fantasy into epic fantasy by the end of it, but never loses its high fantasy roots of we are largely following Eragon on a complicated hero's journey.
Yeah.
And other characters and their perspectives get added in, and that's kind of where the epic fantasy feel of it comes in. High fantasy does not work very well in movie because movies are an audio-visual. You can't get in-depth psychological development from characters unless you're having them like a lot and kind of express their feelings and just over and over again reiterate that. Or else if you're a very, very good director and cinematographer and have all of these other people and great actors, et cetera, and you're able to like convey all that through your direction. But that's not really what fantasy movies are doing. They're very plot focused, right?
Yeah.
So you have this movie that's trying to adapt a high fantasy, but oopsie daisies, it's also a movie, and so we have to have other conflict and show conflict happening. And also we're doing a Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but like that's the thing, they don't show conflict happening.
but they want to. And so they're making a solid, not even a solid, they're making the barest farce of an effort to do so. And once again, this is why I'm like, why do you change these things and not these things when adapting it? Because you could have just had it be focused on Eragon and he does not know what's happening. And all of a sudden he's being attacked by these things. I think that would weaken it narratively, but I also think from a story perspective of we are exclusively focusing on Eragon, I just think it could have worked fine if they committed to it, but they don't commit to it.
The thing is, we have Braum here now to give this context. Like, Eragon being like, oh, I could have taken the Razak, and Braum being like, you're stupid for thinking that, but also the Razak are not your only concern anymore. And then we could have one of the several moments where Urgles just roll up on them, and Braum can be like, hey, this is what I was talking about. You think you're this important? Urza is not going to send just one guy after you. He's going to start directing all of his forces towards you. The King's Guard you're used to are waging their own war. This is a very personal thing now. You are a very personal target. Like, we don't need to see Durza tell the Urgles, hey, go get this guy for me because my other guy's fucked. We could just see the consequences of that, and we won't have this moment of wondering what the fuck were these guys doing up to this point.
Yeah. Well, now that we've gotten that out of our system.
Yeah, now that we've gotten that.
Let's move on, because I'm hungry. So, now that the Urgles are after Eragon and Braum, we do get a brief scene where we see them harassing and probably killing some other people on the road. And in seeing this, Braum is like, oh god, we have to avoid them. His immediate thought is self-preservation. And Eragon says, no, we have to save those people. We can't just leave them there. And Braum rightfully tells him, no, you're a stupid farm boy idiot loser. You can't fight them. And that's when Eragon says, I got skills. And Braum, ignoring the little conflict that they had to begin with as to Eragon saying, no, we have to save those people. No, it's sword fighting time.
Yeah, it's sword fighting time.
It's sword fighting with, like, silly music in the background.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I do want to say egg on my face, where I was just talking about how we don't see these guys doing anything other than attacking the protagonist, and immediately like, so anyway, we see them harassing people on, like, the road. Okay, I guess they do it exactly once, but again, that's hardly enough, because they do it right after they say, oh, I'm going to send the Urgles out now to do this specific task, so now it just looks like the Urgles are just, they're not doing this in any broader context of, like, a war strategy.
And well and truly, like, I think this is a plot convenience to have Eragon and Braum see the Urgles, realize they're a threat, and also for Eragon to be like, no, I can definitely hit things with a sword good, and then Braum fucking kicks his ass. And
Eragon gets
and then we
rinsed.
and then we never see him train with a sword again. It's great. I kind of love this movie and how bad it is. So they do this, and then the next thing that we see is them sitting around an unlit campfire, and Braum is attempting to light it by hitting rocks together.
Yeah, but
and
he
Eragon,
sucks at it.
And he sucks at it. He's so bad. And
So
then
he cheats.
He cheats. We hear him say the word Brissinger and firelights. And Eragon says, what the fuck did you just do? I saw that. You can't hide that from me, old man. I absolutely saw you do something here. And Braum is like, no, I definitely didn't.
And then rocks.
I was just using rocks. So let's move on. So they come to this village. Village of Darrett is what they call it. In my notes, I have it as the Piss Village. This village is covered head to toe, foundations to roofs, in fish.
It's a weird shanty town constructed directly over, like, a well.
Yes.
Where is this relative to the mountainous forest they were just in? No fucking clue.
We don't know. Apparently those fish were real. They
Really?
They filmed in the Piss Village for 4 days. And by the end of it, those fish stank.
Why would the fish? I guess that was cheaper in bulk than manufacturing fish props, but, like, damn. Yeah, I bet it fucking stank. They're, like, everywhere. They are on every single, like, little bridge or fish tied to everything.
The reason that they are here, narratively speaking, is so Brahm is off doing something, and honestly, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah.
Eragon, while on his own, looking for food, I think.
He is explicitly supposed to buy bread. Brahm gives him money and says, "Go buy bread. Don't do anything else.
Don't, like, expose yourself to anybody else.
Don't do anything else, and meet me back here in, like, an hour. Just go buy bread."
So what Eragon does instead is, he sees some goth guy and is like, ugh, I don't like the look of him. And so he ducks into some little shack. And there he meets the fortune teller, Angela. And
decked out in, like, fucking gold in the middle of this shitty shanty town.
She's got gold everywhere. She's an important character in later books, which is why they wanted to introduce her here. And I'm less miffed about her appearance as I am by some other characters who I think are a bit extraneous. But she tells him extraneous information. Or not even extraneous information. She tells him things that he already has heard, which is more or less, you're going to be a hero - important because you can ride a dragon. Which is something that Brahm has more or less already said to him, and Eragon was like, no, that's stupid, I don't want to be important, I just want to go back to my farm. But now that a pretty girl said it to him, he's like, alright, I guess I'm going to go be important and ride my dragon and be a hero.
Oh shit, it's real, actually. She also tells him, hey, someone important to you is going to die, and he's like, no, that already happened. And she's like, no, I mean in the future. It's gonna happen again.
And he's like, no, and then he leaves. Eragon leaves the tent and is pretty much immediately attacked by Urgles. There might be some lead up. It doesn't matter. They are attacked by Urgles. Brahm is also here. They're kind of getting their shit kicked out of them. Like, they're not doing well. As established, Eragon does not know how to fucking fight, but he can shoot a bow.
Hang on, I think there is something I forgot to mention earlier, where, like, you may be thinking, oh, how did these Urgles find them so quickly? In an earlier scene, they tell Saphira, okay, Saphira, we're trying to travel incognito, so fly directly above us. Like, just fly around above us until nighttime and then land wherever we are. And literally, the instant she takes off, it just cuts to a wide shot of a bunch of Urgles looking at her taking off and being like, oh, hey, there she is.
Yeah, that's how they find them in the village. In the midst of this battle, when Eragon is not doing well and Brahm is also not doing well, he takes out his bow and arrow, and with the least amount of sauce to ever shoot an arrow, and therefore it should have just fallen on the ground, but it goes. He pulls back the arrow. He yells Brissinger.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He does not pull back that arrow, which is very funny. He
lightly tugs on the string and the arrow goes flying as he yells Brissinger, and a ball of fire explodes amongst the Urgles. He faints. When he wakes up, he has obviously been rescued. Brahm is like, oh, I see that you have inherent magic because you're a dragon rider. Hey, don't fucking do that again. You haven't received any training and you don't know what you're doing and you're going to get yourself killed. Eragon does not take this to heart in any way, shape, or form, and instead bounces around asking what things are in magic terms because that's how magic works. They explain it as what you name something is what it is. It contains its essence, which is a very cool idea for a magic system, but in this movie, it's a cool magic system in the books because it's written words, and so you can get into the linguistics of the thing because you're reading it. A movie does not have... It's just not the proper medium for that. So all that you need to know, dear listener, is when you say a word, it makes the thing do a thing.
Yeah.
That's what it means for our purposes.
The other part of magic being, it requires a physical strength. Like, it is physically taxing on the body. If you bite off more than you will just die.
Eragon does not heed this warning.
That's why he has a magical hangover.
Then Saphira descends from the clouds. She is now wearing armor. We don't really...
a saddle, not armor.
Saddle. Sorry, not armor. She is now wearing a saddle. Where did we get the saddle? Stefan Fangmeyer says, well, you're supposed to interpret that that's what Brahm was doing in town. We thought about explaining it further, but I don't know. I think it works.
Hey, can I have a saddle for a really big horse? Do you guys have one of those? Like a really big horse.
It clearly also didn't come across the way they wanted it to, because we talked about this both times we watched the movie where we're like, where the fuck did he get that? Hey, how do you get that? Where'd that come
Yeah.
from?
Yeah.
Like, even if he got the
He
leather
would have
from
had
the
to make
town.
it.
Yeah.
And they were not there long enough to do that.
No.
And they
Also,
definitely didn't have one lying around because why would they?
but also then, like, we once again come to the thing of time of how long was Eragon passed out for? Maybe he was passed out for 10 years. That would be long enough time to make saddle. Like, we don't know. We have no idea. It's great.
As far
I
as the
love it
movie's
here.
concerned, he's been passed out for exactly as long as we saw, which was 10 seconds.
He then, of course, like, hops on Saphira. They ride around a bit. My big note on this part was Eragon looks like a dweeb riding the dragon.
My note is that he's terrible at screaming. His actor
Oh,
is
yeah.
so bad at yelling.
Yeah, he doesn't have a good yelling voice. We
Oh,
also do get the concept of Skulbakas Ven, which is,
yeah.
I forget what the exact
It's
translation is.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like together as one. And this is like the Dragon Rider mantra, apparently.
Again, a little bit meaningless. Like, it's supposed to have big meaning, and, in the final battle that's we're coming up upon, maybe that does something for them. But again, because of the way that this movie is, nothing really has that much meaning.
Yeah.
Although we do get a bit of foreshadowing with Saphira saying, "Oh, one day you'll be able to fight standing on any part of my body." And Aragon goes, "I'm going to stand on your tail," and immediately almost falls off of the dragon. And he goes, "Maybe not." So that's a bit of subtle
Maybe not
foreshadowing for
yet.
you.
Maybe not yet. Yeah, very subtle foreshadowing of like, hey, Eragon, did you know you can fight for my tail? Oh, yeah? Well, I won't do that right now. Yeah, you won't do that right now. And then, oh, I guess you won't do it right now.
But then, of course, we can't keep riding the dragon because the Rozoks attack.
Eragon is Skulbakas Ven and gets to see the Razak with his special eyes. Like, he sees through Saphira's eyes, and she has, like, zoom lens and predator vision, just innately.
So they descend together to attack them because Saphira is still kind of weak with it. Like, she's not at full power yet, and Eragon also doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. They crash land. He does use Kaveister, which is like a vine magic. This is important because it flips one of the Rozoks, which has turned into a delightful dummy, into the air, and it kind of flops around a bit, and it's great.
Yeah, he strings them up. Braum does a move that looks like doo-doo ass, where he hits a Razak into the air, and he jumps up and keeps his body, like, perfectly rigid and erect as he, like, raises his sword up so that it's pointed down, and he, like, stabs the Razak mid-air,
Yeah.
but, like, it's like, there are, like, 3 separate cuts of this move happening, like, throughout this arc of him jumping in the air and stabbing down onto the Razak, and the entire time his body is, like, perfectly upright. It's like if you took an action figure and with your hand and just made him do, like, a little jump forward. It
Yeah.
looks really bad. There's, like,
Yeah.
no weight to his landing whatsoever. He's just kind of standing over the Razak and his in it now, and then it dissolves into goo.
So then Aragon and Braum are patching Saphira up. Braum, stresses the importance of you need to take care of your fucking dragon. And by that, he means I have a poultice that looks like mustard. Put it on her wounds. Or poultice, not poultice. A poultice that looks like
Poultice,
mustard.
yeah.
Smear it on her wounds.
Eragon's, again, real pissy about this.
Yeah.
And kind of immediately goes for Braum's hand, which he's been keeping covered this entire time, pulls back his bandage, and oh, hey, Braum has the same brand Eragon does. Well, not the same, but it's the same kind of swirl, just on a different part of his hand. And Eragon's like, oh, you were a dragon rider. And because Eragon is stupid, asks, so hey, where's your dragon? To which Braum is like, it's dead, dude. I told you about this. You know what happened to my dragon. Then he goes on to tell Eragon, yeah, my dragon died protecting me. This is why I am so aggressively telling you to not put yourself in danger, because I am carrying this chip on my shoulder about failing to keep my dragon safe, and I feel, like, guilty about it. And by the way, this sword I've been carrying around is the sword that was used to murder my dragon.
We're back in Gilead, but also, once again, where the fuck are we? Because we see him hanging out for a second with Galbatorix.
Gilead being Durza's base. I don't think we mentioned it was called Gilead.
It's about to become important, so that's why I'm naming it now. For a second, he's, like, with Galbatorix in his fuck-ass cave. And then all of a sudden he's in Gilead. We don't know where these places are to each other, and it's fine. In telling the Urgles to do a better job at finding the boy, he pokes one of them so hard that he just dies. Then he goes and pokes Arya. She does not die, but is poisoned. And the way that this poison works is that he is now like psychically entering Eragon's mind as Arya to tell Eragon where she is so that Eragon can come rescue her. Why Durza does this rather than asking, hey, where are you? So that Durza can just come kill him directly, the world may never know.
Because Eragon would have told him. Because
yes.
when this dream vision of Arya shows up in Eragon's mind, she's like, hey, what's your name? And he's immediately like, oh, I'm Eragon. My name is Eragon. This is what I look like. This is what I'm about.
He wakes up from this and tells Braum, I gotta go save this hot lady I have a psychic connection to. And Braum is like, hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. One, it's in the opposite direction. Two, it's a trap. It like for sure is a trap. Eragon calls him a coward who doesn't know what it means to be a dragon rider and leaves anyway.
Which is rich coming from Eragon, a guy who did not know what a dragon rider was yesterday.
So he gets to Gilead, right? And his plan, I guess, is just to walk in and find her. That's it. And Saphira is expected to come get him, I guess.
Yeah, he tells her to wait outside because he doesn't want to risk her, but Saphira points out, Eragon, you're just some dude.
And also, if he dies, she dies. Whereas she is a dragon, if she gets hurt, one, she's a dragon, it's not going to affect her the same way. Two, he won't also die if she dies.
Better us than our riders is how she...
Which, would suck to lose a dragon, but, like, he has special boy magic. So as he's entering, he sees, he sees the Urgles or one of the guards or whatever, they're leading, like, a bunch of naked guys.
Right, the Boxer Boy army. That's what I wrote in my notes.
And then also, we pass by a couple guys who are just in creepy masks. And Stephen Fangmeyer talks about the creepy masks where he's like, I think we saw them in a magazine or something. We just thought they were scary, so we put them in the movie. Which, again...
They look like the fucking Bene Gesserit just walking around. It's wild.
It kind of rules. So he very quickly finds Arya. She looks at him and is like, what the fuck are you doing here, you dense piece of shit? Go away. You're going to get found. He turns around and Durza is, of course, right there because Durza clocked his shit immediately.
Oh no, he's been found.
Oh my god. They start doing a fight, a bit of a fight. And the way that this fight goes is Eragon goes, stop, let her go. Durza throws a big spear at him. Braum jumps in the way because Braum is here now.
Yeah. Eragon uses his magic immediately and is kind of instantly like, oh no, I have no energy now. I'm going to die.
But he doesn't because Braum jumps his way because he's also here now.
He yells, get out of the way, but does not push Eragon. He instead jumps into the spear.
And then Eragon shoots Durza in the head. Durza turns into particles of dust, but is smiling when it happens. So obviously there's something up there.
It's very funny because Eragon, like, throws Braum's sword at Durza, and Durza knocks it away and says, you'll have to do better than that, and instantly gets domed by an arrow.
That bit's kind of funny.
And again, it's like, hey, why isn't Eragon just using a bow all the time? He's way better with it.
Like, I get that heroes are meant to go at it with swords and shit, but it's so silly arrows. Arya is up and awake now. She and Eragon help Braum to, I guess, like a drop-off point where they want Saphira to come into the fort. But of course they are surrounded by guards and have to start fighting their way out. Oh, this part's fun. Ed Spaliers apparently pointed out to Stephen Fangmeyer, hey, I keep getting saved by other people. That doesn't feel very heroic to me. I feel like Eragon should have, like, a moment. And Fangmeyer deadass phrases it where he's like, I kind of agreed with him, but really, like, just to get him to be quiet, basically, I threw him a bone and gave him a guy that he shoots with an arrow and kills in Gilead. Then, hey, someone does in fact show up to save him again. It's the goth boy from earlier, who we did see creeping around Gilead, but it didn't really matter until just now. Yeah. He's here now. he helps to fight off guys and is left behind when Braum, Arya, and Eragon jump onto Saphira and she takes him out of the fort. This was established. It's difficult for her to carry 3 people at once, which is part of the reason why they left Goth Boy behind, but mostly we need him to not be here for this next part so he can show up later.
We also just straight up don't know who this is.
Yeah, we don't know who this guy is.
It's like, because he's goth, it's weird and implied that he's inherently, like, untrustworthy.
Correct.
Even though he's helping them, they're like, oh, who's this weird goth guy? He was kind of mean-mugging Eragon in the village earlier, and now he's here. What's going on?
Yeah. Braum is obviously dying a little bit. Eragon tries to save him with magic. It is a magic spell that we never saw him learn, so where did he learn how to do that? Because it doesn't work.
I assumed it was like a cut.
Yeah. There is a genuinely touching moment where Saphira takes Braum on her back and she flies him into the sky and he's like riding a dragon as he dies. It's, again, genuinely a good moment in this movie. I like it a lot.
I really like this too. It would have hit a lot harder in a better movie. We have like this moment of Braum like being unable to himself and taking on a lot of responsibility to like the end of the Dragon Riders be good enough. Mm-hmm. And Saphira and Eragon have kind of become these surrogates of his failure, his chance at redemption, and, Saphira letting him die as a Dragon Rider on her would be a very powerful moment if they gave Braum time to more of a character.
They needed to give his backstory room to breathe. I think they should have just revealed it kind of out of the gate that Braum was a Dragon Rider, and therefore we could have had that back and forth. And also, that would make it so that when Eragon kind of calls him a coward, that would then give that more weight in terms of Eragon knows from the very beginning, oh, this guy maybe abandoned the Dragon Riders in their time of need, right? And so him repeatedly saying, no, we can't save these people, no, you can't save Arya, that would be more established for why Eragon then turns around and says, you know what, you suck for that, actually. Whereas right now it seems like he's a child throwing a temper tantrum. Because, Eragon, this actually is very, very dangerous, and you should be avoiding it. Because you're literally the most important guy in the story right now.
Speaking of Braum's backstory is something we forgot to, as part of his backstory, where, this sword I've been carrying around is that sword is also... It is the sword of a person called Morzan, who was also a Dragon Rider, but betrayed them along with Galbatorix, and Braum found him and killed him with that sword.
Yeah. Great plot detail, Heather. I wish it was relevant to anything that happened.
It is relevant to something that is coming up later.
I disagree, and I will explain why when we get there.
Okay.
So, Braum is dead. They bury him in yet another long-forgotten, lonely cairn of stones.
Yes.
We were very excited when we saw this.
It's not stone for long.
Well, yeah, because Saphira, we have established that she cannot yet breathe fire. That is coming up. And she says, yeah, no, I still can't do that, but I can do this. And she breathes very, very warm air onto these rocks, and it turns them into crystal so that you can see Braum inside of it. Very fun, cool shot panning back, and we get her in her full glory.
Specifically, it's crystal that prevents the passage of time. They say this.
Oh, that's right.
She says, okay, well, now he's preserved perfectly, and his body will never decay. And apparently this is something that's less impressive than breathing fire, and I guess all dragons can just do this.
Thangmeier justifies this by saying, it's magic. Don't ask me how hot her breath had to be in order to do that. It's magic, and that's what I like about fantasy.
Yeah.
So we're doing the thing. They're carrying on because they have to. And then, oh no, Arya collapses. What's happening? She grabs Eragon's hand and using psychic beams explains to him, oh no, I've been poisoned. You have to take me to the Varden where they were going anyway in order to suck the poison out. In doing this, they are distracted, and this is when Saphira comes with the goth in her claw, and she drops him on the ground. And he stands up, and he introduces himself. My name is Murtag. I've been following you because you are a dragon rider, and I am fully on your side. My parents were killed by the king. Yeah, by Galbatorix. And so I'm going to follow you and I'm going to support you because fuck that guy.
Yeah, fuck that guy. We hate
Yeah.
him.
Now that we see him in full, for anyone who knows who this guy is, Murtag's actor looks a little bit like Christian Slater. At this point, we are very quickly moving into the last 30 minutes of the movie because that's all that we have left.
Oh my god, there's I feel it has to happen.
Oh, and then also the way that they're going to get to the Varden is for some reason Murtag knows how to get there.
Yeah, for some reason.
He leads them there. Arya is on Saphira's back, and these two are on horseback. They get to the entrance to the Varden's tunnel and are instantly attacked by Urgles.
Instantly.
And so they kind of very quickly have to jump into this pool that leads into the Varden's cave and make this split-second decision. I think that's why they don't really faff around.
Yeah,
they emerge.
Waterfall.
Yeah, we chase a waterfall. We emerge behind it. The Varden, of course, instantly points swords at their neck and are like, who the fuck are you? We're going to arrest you for trespassing. And then Saphira breaks through the waterfall as well. So Eragon can point to her and go, I have a dragon. You can trust me.
I'm the dragon rider. They're like, hey, they come in. They're like, hey, is one of you the dragon rider? And Eragon's like, yep, it's me. Here's my dragon.
We get the briefest little scene, once again, of Galbatorix talking to Durza. All this conveys is that, once again, Galbatorix wants Durza to bring him the boy.
Yeah, everyone is so mad that no one can bring him this boy.
Yeah.
Something I need to point out here. Durza is fine. He looks completely normal. He looks no different than he has looked throughout this entire movie. Getting shot in the head did nothing to him. He looks completely normal in this scene.
He does.
Put a pin in that.
Also, in this, because the Urgles spotted Eragon going into the Varden's cave, they now know where the Varden are, which is something that they've been looking for the Varden for like 20 years, I think, at this point. Now we are introduced to the Varden in earnest. And we see Ajihad, who is the leader of the Varden. Ajihad introduces himself to Eragon specifically, is like, oh, hell yeah, thank you for coming. We want you here so you can help us fight the war. Eragon is over his reluctant hero shit, so he's like, cool. Although there is a moment where we get a callback to what Durza said to him in an early, which is, I knew that you were young, but I expected something more. And that gets repeated here, but in a slightly better context in terms of Eragon kind of, eating humble pie, and just in terms of recognizing, yeah, like, I am a boy.
Yeah, and more so they're not like, oh, we appreciate having you regardless of what form you come to us.
When Ajihad sees Murtag, he's like, oh, arrest that guy.
That goth.
That goth is the son of Morzan, the dragon rider who betrayed us all, and who you will recall was specifically the one who killed Brahm's dragon, and whom Brahm then killed with a sword.
Yeah.
You wanted to bring that up earlier because it's important. I say it's not important because, again, quite comedically, this is set up for a sequel that does not exist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I only wanted to mention it because otherwise it's like, hey, why are they arresting this goth? What are they talking about? And the moment is not done well in the movie, but Eragon kind of turns to this guy and it's like, is this true? Like, oh, wow, you're related to the person who killed my, like, secondary father figure's dragon, who my secondary father figure then killed, and had, like, a fucking blood grudge against. What does this mean for me, Eragon? It is a moment that lasts all of, like, 10 seconds.
It also gets the piss kind of taken out of it because Murtag immediately, like, pulls up his shirt and is like, here is the scar from when my dad tried to fucking kill me. I don't like that guy.
Here is the only thing my dad ever gave me. Fuck that guy. I was happy when he died. But they put him in a cage anyway.
This is a good time for me to point out that every time Murtag is on screen, Fangmeyer is like, oh yeah, look at him. Look at how great he looks.
I love this weird, greasy goth.
He specifically, in the first time we see him without the hood up, he compliments his hair and it's like, oh yeah, Garrett came up with that hairstyle and, it's kind of greasy, but it looks so cool.
The hairstyle being a, like, fucking middle part. Like, just a kind of a greasy, shaggy middle part.
He looks like, if you were a kid in the 90s and, like, you had your cousin who, like, you want to think that he's cool because he rides around on a skateboard, but, like, he smokes cigarettes, but, like, he smells fucking terrible. he never showers and he's really mean to you. That's the hairstyle that this guy has.
Yeah, I believe I described him in the commentary as he looks like the second part of a YA love triangle, even though there is no YA love triangle in this movie. Like, he looks like the bad boy that will bewitch and beguile the innocent Catholic/Mormon girl away from her straight-edge white husband. We might talk about Twilight at some point. Just throwing that out there.
It's a possibility. No, yeah, the entire reason I think that love triangle would break up is because he does stink like weed. Like weed and BO. Like, he smells terrible. That's what I think every time this guy walks on screen. I apologize to you, Mr. Actor, sir. I'm sure you smell lovely in real life.
I mean, it's on purpose. They want him to look shitty and gross.
So we're taking the pin out of Durza looking normal because he no longer looks normal.
Yeah, we get a scene of him, like, presiding over this army, and he looks fucking horrific all of the sudden. He looks like fucking Palpatine. They gave him fucking Palpatine face. His, like, eyeballs are, like, sunken into his head. There's, like, a crust around it. His lips are fucking absolutely shredded, and he is white as a ghost. And his eyes are, like, fucking piercingly, like, yellow. And there's, like, blood crust around his face. And it's like, is this another situation where they, like, edited these scenes out of order? But that doesn't make sense because John Malkovich explicitly says, like, oh, hey, your incompetence helped us find the Varden. And that has to happen after Durza gets shot in the head. So why does he look like this now? Because in my memory, I didn't remember that other inconsequential scene with John Malkovich. I'm like, oh, this is when Durza shows up again. He looks fucked up because he got shot in the fucking head. And like, even though he's a shade and he can only be killed if he's stabbed in the heart, well, obviously getting shot in the head still fucked him up. No, he just looks like that now. Like, in between scenes, he just became really fucked up looking. And this is how he's going to look for the rest of the movie. It is baffling because it is so drastic of a change. You would think there has to be a reason for it, but as far as I can tell, there is just none. He just looks like this now.
I did figure out the reason of my third watch through.
Oh boy, what does the director's commentary say?
So according to Fang Meyer, when this appeared on screen, because obviously the director's like watching the movie and then kind of commenting on it as things come along, he says, as the film went on, I just kind of thought that Durza should be more and more extreme looking.
Oh my fucking god. He's not more extreme looking. Like, oh, I'm sorry, did you forget to keep up the fucking momentum again, Stefan? Like, what are you talking about? He doesn't get more and more fucked up looking. He gets very fucked up looking arbitrarily at, like, the last 20 minutes of the movie.
My note on him is, Durza bottomed out so hard for Galbatorix that his face is all fucked up now. And that's what I had to say about him.
Oh my god. Fuck.
My favorite character in the book series is Nasuada. She is Ajihad's daughter, and she is more or less next in line for the Varden throne, although I don't think that's really how they do things, but she's more or less royalty, right?
Yeah.
And her purpose in the books is to just kind of exist and be a cool lady. But by cool lady, I mean, I genuinely think she's the best written character in the series. I kind of read her a little bit as aromantic and asexual, largely because a big part of what is happening around her is they're trying to arrange an advantageous political marriage for her. And at multiple points, she's kind of like, yeah, I'll do that, but that doesn't really matter to me. I have other shit going on. She's like not interested in Eragon, not interested in Murtagh. She is off doing royalty shit and also bad bitch shit. Like, there is a cool ass scene where I'm not going to describe it, one, because I think it could be triggering, but also because I don't want to spoil it. But she does some blood shit in I think, the fourth book. I love you, Nasuada. Her introduction in this movie, and therefore to the theoretical series, is she walks in on Eragon shirtless and eyes him up. She's never verbally named.
Yeah.
She kind of like makes a comment about, I should have knocked. She takes Eragon out to talk with her dad and then never speaks again.
Never even shows up.
She stands by Ajihad's side during the final battle, but like she never speaks. Here's what Stefan Fangmeyer had to say about
can't
Nos.
wait.
I have this in quotes. Eragon is a young guy, and we don't have too many women in the film, so I think she did a wonderful job.
What the fuck does that mean, Stefan? Wonderful job at what? What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't recommend watching this movie with the director's commentary, especially if you've never seen it before, because when he talks, like, the rest of the audio gets cut down to nothing. On the other hand, if any of what I've been saying that he said sounds interesting to you, I kind of can't recommend it enough. It's kind of a wild time.
This is making me want to retroactively go back and unwatch the movie. I can't stand this guy now. What the fuck are you talking about, man?
So, Nasuada leaves Eragon to Ajahad so they can have, like, a conversation about the coming battle. More or less what happens is that Ajahad expresses disappointment in Eragon, and he's correct for this assessment. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of it. Oh, and they also
This-
show him the armor that they made for him.
This movie loves its, like, dialogue callbacks. There are so many of them. Like,
And
there...
none of them make sense.
Yeah, well, the expected more one, it kind of has a cool payoff. We have, like, Brahm's little Brahmisms, I guess you'd call them, which those don't have a good payoff.
It's weird because the way that they're doing it, it's Stefan Fangmeyer keeps referring to them as themes whenever they come up. We have this theme. And I think he means that in the sense of a musical theme, like something
like
that you're
a
touching
motif.
on. Exactly. That's what he actually means. And I also noted it down as, to me, in a weird way, it also comes more as planting and payoff. But it's less of, there's less payoff and more, we said this one thing so that you can notice it again when someone else says it.
Yeah, it can be interesting when you shift, like, the context of where it's being said, which is why I think the I expected more callbacks work the best. Because, like you pointed out, we have first Durza saying it as, like, an insult, then Ajihad and Eragon kind of both saying it to each other, kind of acknowledging, hey, the present situation's not great, but we're gonna make the most of it, which is a cool transition. And then we get it said one more time in the movie, which kind of is, like, the big payoff moment. But that's, like, one of the only ones that makes sense. There's another one where Saphira and Eragon will say, like, to each other, be careful. No, you be careful. And they go back and forth on that, but it doesn't really go anywhere.
I think if there's any one theme of this movie, actually, it's none of this is going anywhere.
None of this is going anywhere.
Eragon and Arya are suiting up for battle. Well, Eragon's suiting up, Arya already has her armor on, and she approaches him because he's having trouble with it and begins helping him put his armor on. He makes
great, by the way.
Honestly, the armor, most of the costuming, I think, in this movie looks fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
They did a great job on that. And while I'm talking about things that I genuinely think are great, I also just want to quickly say the music in this movie rules. I like it a lot. The guy behind the music is Patrick Doyle. Give him credit. The score of this is a lot of fun. I wish it were louder at certain points and more noticeable, but when you pay attention, you listen to the motifs of the music, it sounds great. It's a great soundtrack. I like it.
I agree. It's about as good as you can ask for a fantasy of this kind.
Yeah.
But anyways, this scene.
Arya's helping Eragon put on armor. He compliments her by saying, you look fit for battle, because unlike in the books, they have a mutual attraction.
Yeah, he has, like, this little pause before he says fit for battle, like, oh, he's gonna say something else, but the battle.
They discuss. He more or less goes back on his whole thing of, like, I don't feel like a hero, why me, why is fate choosing me?
She's talking about, like, oh, this is your destiny, some of us watched the egg for 1,000 years waiting for it to hatch, and it didn't hatch, you got it. Because you're important and special.
And he's like, why me? And she very passionately says, because that is who Saphira chose. And she points at this piece of shield or armor or something. And he looks into it, and there's this shot of his face reflected in this dented-ass piece of armor where he looks like that iPad filter from the year 2012 where your face gets all stretched out.
He looks like it's like his head is like squared and stretched in a way that makes him look like the fucking Neanderthals from Ice Age. It's just his face looks so fucked up, and he's got this goofy little smile on, and you just see this funhouse reflection of him, and then it cuts back to his face, and he has this like very serious, solemn look on his face. He goes, "I barely even recognize myself."
It is the singular funniest shot in the movie.
Every time we saw this scene, we would fucking like lose it. Because, please, I'm begging you, Diana, please tell me the director says something, anything about this shot, because I have to know what the fuck they were cooking.
Okay, so here's what he says. As Ari is saying, like, that's who Saphira chose, he goes, oh yeah, I really like the line that gets said next after this. We see the shot, and he goes, with like a little lip smack, he says, and this is a great little reflection shot right here.
What?
Pure silence. He starts commenting on the next scene.
What? What?
That's it. That's what you get.
No fucking way. That's the extent of his commentary on this. What
That's
the fuck
That's
are
all
you
you
talking
get.
about, Stefan? This is a great reflection scene. No, it's not.
No, that's not what he said. What he says is, and this is a great little reflection shot right here.
Did you lose it, like, again, even harder at that payoff of, oh, this is what was going through his head?
I paused and, like, put my hands in my face in my hands. I was astonished.
God. It's good that I wasn't watching the director's commentary with you, because I would have been fucking hooting and hollering for at least 10 minutes at that revelation. That is unbelievable. What are you talking about? What do you mean?
Listen, if you're going to watch any scene from Eragon, find the scene where he's armoring up. Like, we showed it to multiple people because we were just that delighted by it.
Moving on.
We see Saphira armored up. She looks fantastic. I haven't commented too much on this, and I don't think either of us have once, like, adult Saphira's come in. I obviously am not as enamored with her design once she stops being baby, but I like this design just fine. I do think she looks pretty cool. A lot of fans of the book fucking hate it because she has, like, the feathers all over her. I don't know.
We could discuss it more when we...
I just want to put it out there, like, if you're a fan of the book and you got mad at me for saying that, I understand. They touched your whoopee and they made it all weird. I think this is a pretty cool and unique design for a dragon. I don't mind it the least bit. And she looks cool with the armor on. They have, like, the most basic-ass fantasy dialogue. Saphira breathes fire for the first time. It's kind of cool. War crimes occur. The music is happy about this. And if you were just like, wait, they're at war now? Yes, they're at war. The Urgals are here.
The attack starts, and as the are pouring in, Eragon and Saphira jump off from their perch and do a fucking napalm run, essentially. They light the entire fucking valley on fire, and everyone is so cheerful and thrilled at this. And it's really weird, because these are not, like, as pointed out, these Urgals are just bald people. Like, in the books, I remember they're described as being, like, more monstrous. I'm not gonna get into, like, the weird ethical and, like, racial shit with, like, fantasy, but it is weird that these just look like and we have this moment where they are all burned alive, and it's kind of horrific.
Eragon and Saphira are committing war crimes, but let's check in with our other characters. Murtagh is in a cage just in the middle of war. Everything is on fire around him. Yeah, he escapes.
Not in the middle of war, like, literally smack dab in the center of the battlefield is where they put his cage. I don't know why. But he is like fucking shaking the bars as like death is happening around him, just being like, oh my god, for the love of God, let me the fuck out of here.
They have not let him shower. He is still so covered in filth. Like, his hair is, like, sticking in clumps. He is so fucking filthy at this point. But he gets out, and joins the battle on the side of the Varden, which good for him. I would have fought with the Urgles out of spite.
Well,
What the fuck, Varden?
I think the reason he does is because the reason he gets out is a Varden fucking breaks into his, or not a Varden, an Urgle breaks into his cage and tries to kill him, and that's how he gets out.
See, this is, Heather, all 3 times that I watched this movie, I stopped paying attention right now.
Oh, okay.
So, like, the rest of my notes are very much things that caught my attention because I thought they were funny, and I think rather than trying to describe a nonsense fantasy battle to you, I'm just going to go with the dumb things that I wrote in my notes. Arya is also here. She is doing battle, and she makes girl fighting noises as she does so. Durza casts a spell to summon a smoke dragon monster.
Yeah.
When the first part of it sounds like he says, "I'm naughty."
Yeah, and he is. And I wrote in my notes here, Durza really has Palpatine face in this scene. It's like even worse now. And he also looks like he's about to come as he's casting this spell. Very important.
He hops onto his smoke dragon and starts doing aerial fighting battle with Eragon.
In my notes, I wrote Durza's doing tricks on it.
It's some of the worst camera work in the movie. Durza at one point does like 5 flips to attack Eragon. It kind of rules.
His fucking Sith powers to do this now.
The smoke monster bites Saphira in the neck. Stefan Spangmeyer, like, when this happened, goes, "Oh, I love this moment."
What?
And after Saphira, like, shakes off the smoke dragon, she says, "This wound weakens me."
I do remember that. Eragon tries to use fucking his Skulbakas Ven, but it's not working because Saphira has several whole neck now.
And to make up for it, he does tail fighting and is successful.
Like, I know what I have to do.
He stabs Durza and kind of like leaps into the air as he does so. Durza turns into dust and particles, but this time he's screaming and it's like dark dust and particles, so he's like dead now.
This is the payoff moment where now Eragon says to Durza, "I expected more," in like a kind of vengeful tone. He also says this is for Braum as he's stabbing him. So we have this like moment of payoff in quotes, but it happens so quickly. Like, I don't know. This movie is just paced weird, and it feels like moments of like big payoff they have feel like they didn't really have time to build up anything before the payoff.
Yeah.
This one's okay. But yeah, he does the fucking tail move, stabs Durza, and they're falling to the... But Saphira catches it and crashes.
She's filled to the brim with holes. Eragon says something along the lines of, "You can take everything I have," basically, and once again tries to heal her with magic.
Yeah, he decides to sacrifice his life to Sarah, pretty explicit, even though that's not how it fucking works.
And the way that he does the magic, it's kind of unclear if it really does anything. It's implied that he does something, but she is so injured that it doesn't really help. She makes the comment, "Even you don't have a heart strong enough to heal me," which...
Like, a heart strong enough for us both, I think, is the exact line, implying like, okay, you don't have the strength to make it so both of us live.
Yeah.
But... like you said, the way it's shot, it is really unclear if it does anything. Because they don't, like, zoom in on the wound or, like, even show the wound from any kind of camera angle after he does his healing magic. He just does it, it seems like nothing happens, and he collapses. And then he wakes up on a pile.
They put him to bed on, like, a pile of something, and also he's holding his sword still.
Yeah.
Great. Murtagh is here. He is still covered in filth. And he does a little trick where he kind of acts like Saphira is dead. I forget what exactly he says.
Yeah,
but
Eragon's like, "What happened to Saphira?" And Murtagh looks at him really forlorn. He goes, "Some friends can't be replaced." And then there's like a minute of silence, and then Saphira comes in. He's like, "But luckily some don't have to. I got you. Haha.
I got you. Aha.
Classic Murtagh. You got punked.
Such a little prankster." They repeat another Brahmism. I did not note down what this one was. I don't care.
I'm going to make note of this Brahmism because here, Saphira's like, "That was a stupid thing you did. You shouldn't have done that." And Eragon repeats the words of wisdom from Brahm.
Well, you remember I'm 1 part brave, 3 parts stupid, which got me really mad because this is where the fucking better to ask forgiveness than permission thing would make sense. That callback happens when Braum is, like, dying or whatever. That forgiveness and permission thing comes back when Eragon, like, comes to fight the Razak here, which, like, way back in the woods when he fights them with Braum and kills them. That's when Eragon drops the forgiven thing back at Braum's feet. But, like, it doesn't work there. Because that's where the, like, 1 part brave, 3 parts stupid thing should have been.
So, Eragon is riding Saphira. We don't really know where he's supposed to be going next, but Arya is there to greet him.
Yeah.
She wants to fuck him so bad, and, like, girl, raise your standards.
He's going specifically to catch up to her because she left to go do important shit before saying goodbye to him. So he's like, oh no, I gotta go talk to girl. I gotta go talk to girl who's I've got a psychic connection to. And if you don't mind what I wrote in my notes about this conversation, she tells Eragon that he's lost people and that's sad. Like he's too stupid to know that, and genuinely the way he reacts to it, he fucking might be. But she then says, and this is a direct quote, "Time moves quickly. Only yesterday you were a farm boy." And it seems like this is supposed to be metaphorical, but the pacing is so fucked that it genuinely feels like she is being literal, and that literally yesterday he was a farm boy, because every single fucking thing that has happened in this is cut. So there's so much momentum, Stefan, that it feels like this happened in the span of 24 hours.
And that's kind of it.
Yeah.
He flies away. They don't say it, but I think this is the point where he's gonna go off and train with the elves. But then, oh, whoa, what's happening? It's something else. Another scene has appeared. It's John Malkovich, and he has a sword, and he takes the sword, and he angrily cuts his map in half. And holy shit, there was a dragon there the whole time!
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah, and that's the end of the movie, and in my notes, all caps, the final thing I wrote is just Avril Lavigne with 5 question marks, because that, for whatever reason, is what the credits are playing.
And the end.
The end. A fucking Avril Lavigne song starts playing over the credits, and I lose my shit.
Jesus fucking Christ.
What a watch.
What a watch. Before we get on to our Dragon's Game, I have my much promised review section.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm so ready for this.
On to the review.
I'm so excited. I'm seated.
This thing has a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that means a lot to me personally, because, like, yeah, this movie is bad, and no, I'm not expecting people to like it, but 15% just kind of seems mean as a percentage of how many people like this thing. Yeah. Oh,
Critic
and I
or
want
audience score?
That's the critic score. I don't remember if we did this for Dungeons & Dragons, but for the people out there who don't know how Rotten Tomatoes work, because I see their numbers getting thrown around a lot in the context of, oh, this movie is so bad, it got a 15 out of 100. That's not what Rotten Tomatoes is. The score that you see on Rotten Tomatoes is based on the reviews that they have gotten, how many people said that they liked it. When we say it has a 15% score on Rotten Tomatoes from critics, it means that 15% of the critics that they polled for their reviews, that they aggregated, because it's a review aggregate site, like that's the exact term for it, that's how many people said that they liked it. I just want to put that out there because people still don't know what Rotten Tomatoes, like what their score means, and I'm not saying this to be mean to you, I'm saying this because we live in a time of a lot of ignorance, and even in the smallest ways, I would like to dispel some of that. So now we have the Google ratings.
Oh boy.
It has a 3.4, which again feels very correct. About half of the scores are a 5 out of 5 stars. And about, like, I would say 20, and I would say a 25 to 30% is a 1 star, so that's kind of what brought it down. And the rest are spread evenly throughout the others. Here is the top review that I saw when I went through Google reviews yesterday. This is from a reviewer named Fayez Khan from about 8 months ago. 5 out of 5 stars. Never before have I had the fortune to witness a film as breathtaking as Eragon. The sheer mastery behind each scene is complemented by the Oscar-worthy performances by each member of the cast.
What?
Ed Spielers shines as the lead role, bringing a whole new meaning to the word hero. The only criticism I will say about his performance is that he received no nomination or rewards for it. A travesty. 50
That's
years
not a
from now,
that's not
no,
a criticism.
50 years from now, when asked what film would stand out the most, I would simply say Eragon. 2006 truly was the pinnacle of human evolution. Not only did director Stephen Fangmeyer bring this world to life, he created a masterpiece that should be remembered as the greatest fantasy film ever made. It was truly a legend. 8 people found this helpful.
What? Huh?
Now let me read you.
No. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, I think you might want to let me read on this one.
Okay. I was just gonna say, did fucking Stefan write that? Like, what are you talking? What?
So this is the second review that was on Google's when I checked yesterday. This is
Uh-huh.
from Joseph Gamble, written 5 years ago. No rating. Never before have I had the fortune to witness a film as breathtaking as Eragon.
God.
The sheer mastery behind
Oh my
each
God.
scene is complemented by
Oh
the
my God.
Oscar-worthy performances by each member of the cast.
Oh my
Ed
God.
Spieler shines as the lead role, bringing a whole new meaning
No.
to the word hero. The only criticism I will say about his performance is that he received no nomination or awards for it. A travesty. 50 years from now, when asked what film would stand out the most, I would simply say Eragon. 2006 was the pinnacle of human evolution. Not only did director Stephen Fangmeyer bring this world to life, he created a masterpiece that should be remembered as the greatest fantasy film ever made. It was most definitely fat. 98 people found this helpful.
I'm sorry, what was the last line?
It was most definitely fat. F-A-T.
That wasn't in the previous one, right?
No, that was the only part of the review that the above person changed when they copy-pasted it.
What? Huh?
That's Google reviews. I think it's officially time for the Dragon Scale.
We've gotten done reading ratings on the movie. It's time to rate the dragon.
Rate that dragon.
Rate that dragon. Well, in case you didn't listen all the way through our premiere episode, one of the core features of this podcast is the Dragon Scale, a numerical, quantifiable scale we developed for rating the dragons in movies as we watch them. We have 5 categories: taxonomy, elegance, terror, prominence, and effectiveness. If you want a more detailed breakdown of this scale, go listen to the first episode, because we cannot do it at the end of every single one.
That would be very silly.
The scale, we're going to start with taxonomy. So, obviously, the dragon we are rating is Saphira.
Yeah.
This is the most premier dragon, the only dragon we really see with any kind of relevance. So, we're going to be rating Saphira here. Taxonomy. The category for how much of a dragon is this dragon? And I think, no questions asked, this is a 10 out of 10.
This is a 10 out of 10. And I do not want to hear from the pedants who are like, oh, she has feathers. No, she's just like a cool dragon with feathers. She's a dragon.
Shut up.
Elegance, honestly, I
I
want to give her like a 9.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think this is a pretty high score for Saphira. The feathers add a lot, the colors, and she moves with a kind of grace as well.
I said it before and I'll say it again, and it makes more sense now that I know they had $100 million to throw behind this thing. This is a good-looking creature for 2006.
Saphira does look fucking,
Now, terror.
fucking slay, girl.
Slay, girl, slay.
Yeah.
Now, terror.
I'm not really ever, like, terrified of Saphira. Terror being basically, how much do I respect and fear this creature as a force of nature and
honestly,
power.
No one else in the movie really, like, she roars at people to intimidate them sometimes, but they just seem, like, more impressed and like, oh yes, your dragon is indeed a dragon.
Oh yeah,
We recognize that this is a dragon.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you're pointing it out, Saphira, like, barely gets acknowledged by anybody else in this movie. Hell, she barely gets acknowledged by Eragon for good chunks of it.
Like, it feels mean to say it too, but I almost want to say it too.
I was gonna say maybe like 4 or 5, because she still shows that she is a formidable threat in the final battle, but
sure.
Eragon does a good chunk of the work there.
I'd settle for a 4.
Regrettably.
I think a
Yeah.
4 is fine.
I think Alright, prominence. Well, I think Saphira is in a lot of this movie.
Hmm.
I would say maybe a 9 or 10.
I would put it down to an 8 because there's so many points in this movie where they just kind of shove her off to the side. And also for a talking dragon, she really doesn't get a chance to shine.
You know what?
You know?
I'll agree with you there. I think prominence not just being how often they also how prominent are they in the actual, do they is their presence felt throughout the movie? And I would say it is. I'll go 8 for that, maybe 8.5 if you're willing to kind of meet me halfway.
I'm willing
okay.
to do it.
Now, effective. Is this
She's
dragon effectively used as a dragon in this story?
She's kind of a vehicle.
She's kind of a vehicle, but I mean, I was gonna say you kind of get a sense of her in this. I think she is effective in the sense that, okay, this is a movie about people who ride dragons and the bond they have with these dragons. And this is important to effectively deal with a greater problem. However, the problem with that is this movie is so flimsy and all those in establishing all that it kind of hurts Saphira, but I don't want to ding Saphira for that. For the scenes she appears in, she is very effectively doing the damn thing that she is supposed to.
Yeah, I was gonna say a comfortable 8. An 8 is very comfortable for me here.
Yeah, I agree. 8 is pretty good. Because in every scene she's in, she is driving she's never just there doing nothing. She's involved in a lot of the moments that we more.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say she's pretty effective. I agree, comfortable. And that brings final score to 7.5 out of 10.
I do like that score a lot, but I kind of want to give her a bonus because I really like her.
I was gonna say, do you want to give her a half a point bonus for being so darn cute at the beginning?
I'm willing to bump that up to a full 1 point.
A full 1 point. All right. You know what? We're feeling generous today. Let's drop that in. And that brings Saphira's total up to a 9.075 out of 10. A very, very strong 90%. An A minus for Saphira on our scale. So that puts us, I've input Saphira into our chart of dragons, of which there are currently only 2.
Only 2.
And that puts Saphira at number 1 in our spot, ahead of all of the dragons in Dungeons & Dragons 2000.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
Fuck those guys. They're not nearly as cool as... She's blue.
She's blue. And very
prominent. Well, yeah. That was Eragon. That was Dragon Spotting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Before we leave, we gotta make sure to plug what is, at the time of recording this, our new social media.
We are on Blue Sky, Tumblr, and YouTube as @DragonSpotting, all one word. If you want to follow what we're doing, that's where you go to be in the know. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been Heather.
I've been Diana, and I will continue to be.
And we'll spot you later, because I still haven't come up with a better sign-off.
I think that's great. We'll spot you later.
Goodbye. Oh, Skulbakas Ven, everybody.
Skulbakas Ven!
See you later.
Bye.